Am I the asshole for not telling my roommate about my large salary, when I'm aware he's been struggling to pay rent? I, 28F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 roommates. It's small and we step on each other's toes sometimes, but it works for us because we were all in graduate programs when we met and needed something cheap. For the last 6 years, we've all split rent evenly, and I've been fine with that. Even when they all got jobs and I was still a resident, I didn't once ask to adjust the rent. Now, to be honest, I'm a very quiet and non-confrontational person and residency kept me on weird hours so I didn't speak to them a lot and they didn't even realize that I'd finished my program when I did. I also live on the 2nd floor of our apartment in a space off the attic storage that was meant to be an office, so I keep to myself and go about my business. Once I became a licensed emergency physician, I was able to find a job in our city relatively quickly and started working about 4 months out of residency. I'd already worked as an EMT for years around this hospital, even in college when I was getting clinical hours for med school, so I knew the ED well and it wasn't hard for me to get a job there. I still had loans from med school to pay off so I saw no problem with hanging around and paying my same share of the rent, utilities, and groceries that I'd paid for 6 years until I built up savings, even though I was making more than my other 3 roommates combined. I'm not in a relationship, don't want kids now, and I liked my little living arrangements while I got some savings behind me. I was fine until crap hit the fan yesterday, and by some insane stroke of bad luck, one of my roommates, a 27M, was in a car crash and was transported to the hospital by ambulance when I was on shift. He was fine, just a bit of whiplash and a stitched-up cut from broken glass, but while he was in the ED he saw me and realized I wasn't a resident anymore. Even though he couldn't pin down my exact salary, a quick Google search could tell him that in our city I was making at least double what my roommates were. He was pissed and he told my other 2 roommates while I was still at work, so when I came home, they were all waiting for me. He confronted me and asked me what I was making, and I told them the truth. They all lost their minds at me because I knew that A had been struggling to make his share of the rent every month, whereas I was hoarding my money. I listened to what they had to say but said that I still had loans to pay off and I was going to bed. I was tired after a long shift, and I'm aware that I was probably really blunt and cold because when I'm getting yelled at, part of my job description is just to take it with a calm face. This morning, they've all been giving me the cold shoulder, and though they haven't talked about it yet, I can feel it coming. I don't know how to address this because I really liked our living arrangements and don't want it to change, but I can't help feeling like I'm the AH for not helping A out more. So, am I the asshole? Update: thank you all for your advice and well wishes. I wanted to come on here and answer a few common questions and update those who requested one. First, our living situation. Our apartment has 2 bedrooms, 1 master with its own bathroom and 1 smaller bedroom. A and his GF live in the master, and our 4th roommate is in the smaller room. My room is about the same size as the smaller bedroom, just without a closet, and with a slanted ceiling. Second, why did I tell them the truth about my salary? Honestly, I was tired after a shift and I wasn't expecting to get ambushed in my own home so I wasn't thinking about it. I started throwing out numbers at me and he was close enough that I just said yes without giving him an exact total because he already basically knew. Why did he Google it when he saw me? I don't know, he probably had nothing else to do. He wasn't a high-priority patient and was likely sitting in triage for long enough to get bored and pissed. Now, here are the actual updates. I talked to our 4th roommate, D, not A or his GF, and he gave me their perspective in a much more polite way. I had come back, angry because his car had been wrecked, he had a hospital bill to pay, and because he thought I'd been deceptive with my income. He got his girlfriend all riled up about it before I got home because she'd been supplementing his rent and helping him while he was between jobs. I didn't know about this, while I had just been paying my portion and not helping when I could. Then the 2 of them went to D and brought him into this so it would be a 3-on-1 and they felt justified about asking me. They thought since I didn't help out around the household much and because I was making more, I should either pay more or move out and give my room to one of their friends who needed cheap housing more than I did. I admit, I buy my own food and cook my own meals and keep my own space clean whereas I think the rest of them do that communally, but that was because I kept terrible hours with residency and with my job and I wasn't around as much. As for someone who needed it more, I told D that this apartment had never been need-based. It had been passed down from student to student as people chose to move away. D is younger, 24-25, and still in grad school, as is A's girlfriend, but A graduated already and still lives here with a job and no one has argued that someone needed it more. He asked why I didn't want to move away and get my own place, and I said I really liked the arrangement and I wanted to pay off my loans, which were still very large and my net worth was likely less than all of them with the amount of debt I'd accumulated. When I explained my student loans to D, he got very quiet and just said that he didn't realize that they were still big and thought they were smaller because I had a scholarship. I explained that my athletic eligibility only lasted for my first year because I had redshirted my freshman year of uni, so my athletic scholarship was only for that year. Now that I know their perspective though, I know nothing is going to change their attitude towards my money and it's time to move on. This morning I told them that I'm staying until the end of my lease and then moving out, and they are more than welcome to move someone else into my room. They wished me well, and I'm hoping that my last few months here won't be too tense since we all know there's an end in sight. I started looking at studio apartments, but I'm also looking at the possibility of putting a down payment on a house and starting to settle down. In all honesty, it was probably time for me to get out of my comfort zone and start living on my own, and this is going to be good for me. Thank you all for your kind words and advice. Stories number 2, how to tell my 37F boyfriend, 38M, that we are so broke we need to go to the food bank. I have a job and I have a side business. It's slow season for my business, so income is next to nothing. I recently changed jobs to a better paying one and steady hours. But, I'll get a half pay check on the 15th and my full pay will be on the 29th. My old job did not pay nearly enough or give me enough hours, so my last pay from them will only have 4 hours worth. I got paid 2 days ago. I paid about half the bills and I have $80-ish to last me. I haven't gotten groceries or dog food, plus there are more bills to be paid. I've asked my boyfriend to spend money wisely because I literally have no extra money. I spent the day yesterday looking for loose cash around the house and taking in bottles and cans to pay a little more on bills. The boyfriend did fill up my gas tank so I could get to work for the next little while. Yes, my boyfriend should chip in more with the bills. He doesn't. Yes, it's a problem I'm working on. Either way, it doesn't solve my immediate problem. Food. I found my local food bank and I can pick up a basket of food after applying for it. Catch. They want the IDs of everyone in the household, but only one of us have to be present. I obviously need his consent to take his ID. I'm beyond embarrassed admitting that my business has put me so behind on bills that I have to go to the food bank. I really don't know how to approach this. Any advice? Stories number 3, am I the asshole for saying my silly way of grieving isn't healthy at all and being concerned for my niece? My brother Roger and his wife Sandra, their first daughter around 5 months ago. It's been amazing, mainly for my parents, who are pleased that my brother has been open to letting them in my niece's life. My parents weren't the best owing growing up and Roger cut them off for nearly 16 years, so we're glad our family is healing slowly but surely. Before my brother, she was married to another guy who she hated. I never got the full scoop till about 2 years into their relationship. What happened was her ex-husband was supposed to watch their 5-year-old son as she had work and instead got drunk and passed out on the couch. The boy ran in the street and got hit and died. I've always felt sorry for her, as I couldn't imagine losing my own children, especially that young. The only problem I have is my silly attitude when it comes to my niece. She started to treat my nieces as if she's her son reborn. Saying things like her Nico, son's name, had the same smile, claiming she's doing things he did when he was born. From the few times I've seen her, I don't live close to my brother, so I can't see them as regularly as my other family. She's either tearing up saying she wished Nico could have seen his baby sister and how good of a big brother he would have been. It started bothering me. I don't want my niece to end some sort of therapy doll, as she's her own person. I talked to my parents and my siblings about this and they agree, saying they're scared in the future my niece won't be anything but just Nico 2.0. I decided to talk to Roger about it. We invited him to a dinner. Luckily Sandra couldn't make it and stayed home with my niece. I was direct and told him I think her actions are toxic and he should get her checked out mentally. My brother asked everyone if that's what they thought and they said yes. Then he asked everyone if any of us had lost of a kid. If any of us had gone to work a parent and came back to a dead kid. He said no, we haven't, and so we couldn't understand what she's feeling. He said postpartum has been hell on her and she's not using my niece as therapy doll, she's just feeling guilty and sad about death. Nico, that's it. He said she's just points out small things and obviously knows that my niece and Nico are two different people. He said she's vulnerable right now and only needs love and reassurance that she's a good mom and is doing right by her daughter, and since we can't give her that, he'd like us to stay away from him for a while. He then left and has us blocked on most things. I don't think I was wrong. I'm genuinely concerned for my niece. Am I the asshole? Stories number 4, am I the asshole for cutting ties with my brother-in-law and for being upset with my wife for her part in it? Below. I'm sorry for the length. I'm 33M, a happily married man. And my wife is my best friend. We are supposed to be a team and have each other's backs and best interests at heart. It's a cliché. It's cringe. But it's true. However, something has came up and it has me doubting and looking at her differently. I want to know, am I the asshole for being upset with her for all this? Long story short. About a year ago, my wife asked me to sell a spare vehicle that I was doing nothing with to her brother. His fiancée and him shared a vehicle and it wouldn't do since they were moving to another state. Very reliable. Nothing flashy. KBB at $5,000 to $6,000. She knew that I never used it. I definitely didn't need the money and am still not in a position where a loss would hurt me or matter to me. I didn't want to do it because if something did happen, I didn't want to be blamed or guilt or whatever. She assured me that wouldn't happen. He was a stand-up guy, etc. Went ahead and did it. Huge discount. $1,500 opposed to KBB. She wasn't pushing me to sell it, but I could tell that she really wanted me to. And her brother and I were on pretty good terms back then. I even went ahead and said they could make payments due to moving expenses being pretty heavy. They offered to come up with something before the move on June 10th. I said if they did that, then they wouldn't have to make a first payment until August. They came up with $250 and moved to Tennessee. Now from June to August he ignores me. Normally he used to respond to my calls or texts almost immediately. So when he ignored my 4 or 5 texts, nothing aggressive mind you. Just casual oh hey how's it going out there? Or hope everything is going well. Haven't heard from. I became a little hesitant, but not concerned. After all, I truly didn't and don't need the money. Then I find out he's talking to my wife pretty regularly but ignoring me. He finally answers me at the end of August and says he will send me something by the end of the week. Well, the end of the week comes. He continues to ignore me. August turns into November. He's continually talking to my wife. She is talking with him like nothing is wrong. Talking to him like everything is fine. Never mentioning me or the situation with me once. Finally I've had enough. I told him if he can't make the payments, I'll take the car back because my dad's friend will give me $6,300 cash on the spot. No hard feelings. But he'll just take the car back. He responds with sunshine and rainbows and apologies and promise after promise. I explain it's not the money, but the principle. I just needed communication and a little appreciation for doing a favor I never wanted to do that none of his friends or family would have done. He swears he will get me something by the end of the week. Promise excuse promise excuse. The end of the week comes, then the month, then the end of the next month. My wife continues to talk to him as happy and as normal as ever. I lose it on him. He explodes and says some things he could never take back. The argument turned into something that would end our relationship forever. Well, all this time he's been coming back to Colorado almost every month. So I ask when is he coming back so he can bring the car. He says it'll be a year or 2. At the time I'm working a lot and can't just drop everything and head out there. I go to get it transported. It'll be about $1,900 to do so. I make arrangements with him to do it and then on the day of transport he hides the vehicle. I had to pay half up front and lose out on the money. I explain to my wife I'm done and he's out of my life forever. I also find out that either before I said I'd take the car back or after, he trashed the vehicle. Wrecked the hell out of it. Trashed it inside. Fucked it all up. I found out that my wife knew about that. I found out that since then she has kept along with talking to him and never one time getting upset with him or yelling at him or even just mentioning it once to him. I then find out that 2 months or so he drove the car back here. She not only knew about it but also went and saw him. She knows how hard I've been trying to get it back from him. I won't call the cops. Just can't. I'm not that guy. But she saw him. Saw him in it. Didn't tell me. Continues talking to him. And now I'm doubting everything and seeing her differently and am more than hurt and upset. She says I'm overreacting and being dramatic. What do I do? Am I the asshole? Am I overreacting? WTF. Stories number 5. My 29M, girlfriend, 28F, has gotten involved in an alternative health lifestyle. It's destroying our relationship. Apologies in advance for the length of this one. For context, I have been with my girlfriend for over 2 years. The entire time I've known her, she has been following the diet protocols of medical medium, censoring as the followers of this lifestyle notoriously search for keywords and raid posts that speak negatively of it. You can do some research on this and draw your own conclusions. Truthfully, I don't even really have a totally negative view of the diet protocols in general. For those unaware, the general guidelines of the involve no gluten, no eggs, no dairy, no soy, daily celery juice, and some other specific targeted restrictions depending on what symptoms you're experiencing. She's always told me that she has healed numerous symptoms she was experiencing surrounding Lyme disease with this lifestyle, and I really don't have any reason to doubt her. I always told her that if this lifestyle works for her, that's what's important. I personally do not follow this lifestyle and have felt no need to. I don't eat meat and have greatly reduced my intake of caffeine and alcohol over the past 2 years, most at her urging, and feel great. But I also really love the occasional pizza and Taco Bell and really don't want to give that up. Now, this lifestyle has always put some strains on our relationship. I can't take her out to restaurants as there is nothing she can eat. She has turned down opportunities to spend the weekend at the beach because she didn't want to have to deal with packing food. When we do end up going places we are often late as she has to pack various foods and smoothies, things like that, but we always manage to have a good time together. When I met her, she was living with roommates. Her roommates didn't follow the lifestyle, so she faced some levels of cross-contamination with their conflicting diets. At this time, we would often spend time at my place as I didn't have roommates, so the privacy was nice. As previously mentioned, I do not follow the lifestyle either, but at the time, she didn't seem overly concerned with cross-contamination. She would even use my Clorox wipes to clean things off if needed and drink water out of my Brita. We always had fun in our relationship. A little over a year into our relationship, she moved into her own place. This is when things started to take a turn. Since she was now in control of her own space, she was able to go all in on this lifestyle. This meant zero cross-contamination in her home and only using natural cleaners such as distilled white vinegar to clean her home. Okay, even at this point, still not awful. However, shortly after she moved in, she started talking more and more about us living together. This is something that I wanted, but I asked her how she felt about cross-contamination as her apartment only had one kitchen. She seemed weary but was also adamant that we could make it work. For the time being, we decide to hold off and try to save money for a larger place. Time passes and things get progressively harder. The lifestyle is an expensive one with specialized supplements and organic food. Her grocery bill for just herself usually exceeds $900 per month. This is on top of a rather expensive monthly rent for her apartment. While she does have a good paying job, these two factors have put her in a financial strain and created debt for herself that she has been trying to get out of. I have tried to help. I spent hours upon hours researching foods that are okay to eat with this lifestyle, things that can be bought organic versus okay to buy non-organic, and have created meals for her that fit well within the general restrictions of the lifestyle at a much budget-friendlier rate. The issue, however, is that she will often discover a new symptom she has that will require the recipe to be scrapped. For example, I created a budget-friendly rice-based meal for her based on recipes and restrictions I found on the website. I spent hours upon hours researching each ingredient, where it's cheapest to buy, what can be bought non-organically, etc. I made the meal for her, she ate it, and she really enjoyed it. Yes. I thought, this is going to help a lot with her financial troubles. Well, a few days later, she told me that she is having symptoms that relate to strep, and according to grains such as rice feed strep, so she can't have that meal anymore. I felt utterly defeated. On top of all this and despite her financial concerns, she talked about not going to the dentist until she can afford to go to the only friendly dentist within 200 miles of us. I questioned this and raised concerns about the financial and health risks of not going to the dentist regularly, but she assured me she needs this. Since she moved into her own place, we went from spending a majority of our time together at my apartment to spending a majority of it at hers. I know it's because she feels more comfortable in her home as opposed to mine, so I don't mind. Recently, she came over and stayed the night at my place. Shortly after coming in, she fell silent. She sat on the couch and didn't say much. We then went to bed. At around 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning, she gets up, tells me she can't fall back asleep, and goes home. Once I wake up, I text her and ask her if everything is okay. She tells me that the environment, my apartment, gets to her and asks me to start using non-scented cleaners when cleaning my place. For me, this isn't an issue, however. I brought up how we used to spend all of our time together at my place, about how she would use my lemon-scented Clorox wipes to clean off my counter, about how she would drink from my Brita, and how all of that seemed fine, but now she can't be near scented products or drink out of anything other than a Berkey filter. She countered this by telling me that she's wanted to live this lifestyle for a long time and she couldn't until she got her own place. She proceeded to tell me that if she is submerged in chemicals, she will literally die. At this point, I feel completely broken down. She still resents the fact that we don't live together, but I don't know how we're supposed to live together when we've gotten to the point of having two completely separate lives. I went scouring the internet for answers. The community is large enough that I figured someone would have run into this before. While searching, I found a comment that she left in response to a blog post. In this comment, she laments about how I don't follow the lifestyle, how my bouts of anxiety would go away if I just followed the protocol, how she doesn't want my pathogens in her, expresses frustration that she is going to look better than me as we get older, and she is questioning the relationship altogether. This completely floored me. I confronted her with this post and essentially asked her, is the goal to make me switch over little parts of my life until I'm completely on board with the lifestyle? She didn't deny this accusation. I am just totally broken. I've tried to be as accommodating as possible. While I didn't subscribe to the beliefs of the lifestyle or protocols, I spent hours upon hours of my life researching ways to be accommodating to her needs. She constantly expresses her displeasure with the fact that we don't live together, but in the next breath says that she can no longer stand to be in my apartment for a few hours because of all the chemicals. I've been keeping myself on a strict budget and being as frugal as possible to save up for a home for us while she is unable to do so because of this expensive lifestyle. It's really crushing to bend over backwards for this relationship, spending countless hours researching a lifestyle I don't align with and putting away every extra dollar I have only to be met with, sorry, unless you completely switch your lifestyle around, this isn't going to work. This isn't the girl I met 2 years ago and it's heartbreaking. We used to have such fun together, now I have to talk her off the ledge when she tries to break up with me because I eat pizza, seriously. In my perfect world, we could go back to how things were before when we had separate diets but could still have fun together. In her perfect world, I would completely abandon my life to subscribe fully to the lifestyle. I understand relationships are all about sacrifice and compromise, but I feel like the sacrifices won't end until I'm eating nothing but raw potatoes and celery juice every day. Has anyone had experience with a partner deeply involved in the medical medium lifestyle, or any deeply restrictive alternative health lifestyle? I desperately want this to work, but how do we move forward when she essentially feels as though the way I live my life is going to wind up killing her? TLDR, my girlfriend is falling deeper and deeper into an alternative health lifestyle. It's creating serious strains in our relationship both financially and emotionally. I have no idea what to do. Stories number 6. Am I the asshole? For telling my husband that if he wants to say he does everything, then he can go ahead and prove it. Not the a-hole. I, 25F, have been married to my husband, 29M, for 5 years. I am a Psalm to 2 kids, 4F, 1M. While I was making breakfast this morning, DH was breaking down boxes so he could take out the trash and recycling that had piled up over the last week while we were all busy with Halloween activities. A box filled with packing peanuts got spilled when he picked it up, and one comment from him and spilling them ended up turning into a big argument about how I don't help with chores around the house. For the record, the only 2 chores we agreed would be his responsibility were dishes and taking out the trash. Every once in a while I will ask for help with changing a diaper or feeding the kids the food I've already prepared, but the 2 main chores he has are dishes and trash. I take care of their laundry, I take them places during the day for their education and entertainment, library, children's museum, etc. I try to fit a load of dishes in during nap time while our daughter eats lunch to try and help when the dishes are starting to get out of hand, and sometimes if he's particularly tired after a day, he'll ask me to help with dishes so he can go to bed. Unfortunately for the past week, both the trash and the dishes went neglected while we were running around doing Halloween activities with the kids. So in the argument this morning he claimed that he does everything and has to beg me to do even just 1 load of dishes a month. And now he's told our daughter that I'm being sarcastic because I left to go eat my portion of the breakfast I made for the family in our bedroom while he finishes figuring out how to get all the trash taken out, do a load of dishes, feed our son the eggs I made, and find a way to entertain our daughter and keep both kids out of trouble while he's busy. And that's still not everything I do, because I managed to find a minute to do the kids' laundry earlier this week and I'm the one that made breakfast before the argument started. Am I the asshole? For letting him prove he does everything if he's going to claim it. Stories number 7. I, 28M, saw a text from my girlfriend's, 27F, male coworker, saying that she has the best in town and not sure what to think. I, 28M, saw a text from my girlfriend's, 27F, male coworker, saying that she has the best in town, and not sure what to think. Earlier today when my girlfriend was getting ready in the morning I saw a text pop up on her phone. I usually wouldn't look but she left it on the bed facing up, and her texts come through pretty prominently, from a male coworker that she's told me about in passing, let's call him Doug. So I had no clue what the context of the situation was, but all I saw was the one text stating you sure do have the best in town with that exact emoji. So now I'm just confused because I feel like that's some code for something. She was also hella dodgy when I casually dropped that Doug texted her. She avoided my gaze for the rest of the morning while we were getting ready, and seemed distracted when I dropped her off. Thoughts on what that might mean, or how to approach her. So we broke up lol, turns out the best in town was exactly what I feared, but I'm honestly kind of relieved. We had our problems and this was probably for the best for me at least. The only thing that sucks is that she refused to tell me WTF the emoji meant in that context. Honestly, all the guesses people have been throwing out there have been cracking me up and helping to keep me sane right now. Moral of the story, never date a girl with best in town. Stories number 8. Did I fail the supportive wife test by cooking a roast dinner instead of doing an airport run? My husband, 46M, has been overseas on a business trip for the past week. I'm a school teacher, 47F, and have been home on a midterm break. Over the weekend, our very elderly cat, 19.5 years, began to deteriorate in health rapidly. So as soon as our vet clinic was open on Monday morning, I made her an appointment knowing they would probably recommend putting her down. This all happened while my husband was on the longest return leg of his journey home and was uncontactable for over 10 hours. But I left messages on our family chat informing he and our adult children what was happening. The vet could only fit us in around an hour before my husband's flight was due to land. We hadn't discussed how he was getting home, but generally when he travels on business, he Ubers to and from the airport. I knew my husband was feeling low before he boarded the plane. The trip hadn't gone as well as he had hoped, and he had been confronted and verbally abused by a disgruntled associate in front of a number of people on the last day of a trade show. He's not a confrontational person, so this caused immense distress and embarrassment to him. I would have liked to have met him at the airport, and the thought did cross my mind. However, in previous years, he has been unreceptive of me going rogue and arriving to pick him up unexpectedly. He has complained about the cost of parking and fueling our car, when he could claim an Uber as a work expense much more easily. I think he also appreciates that final bit of alone time to reflect and debrief before submersing himself in busy family life. As I expected, the vet said it was time for our beloved pet to depart this life. However, my children, 20M and 22M, had not had the opportunity to say goodbye to a pet they had grown up with and had requested to see her one last time. So the vet provided medication to keep her comfortable and I brought her home for the night. I stopped on the way from the vet to pick up ingredients for a roast dinner. As I was preparing to cook, I got a text from my husband saying he had landed and was aware of what was happening at home. I messaged back and asked if he wanted someone to pick him up, because one of our sons could have driven to the airport to get him at that point, but I didn't get a reply. He caught an Uber home, gave everyone a warm hug and appreciated his roast dinner. We all spent the night cuddling and loving our beautiful Moggy. The next morning he made breakfast, and as we sat at the counter eating, he told me that I failed the supportive wife test last night by not picking him up at the airport, knowing how his trip had ended. He said he hoped I didn't fail it again on Sunday when he runs his first marathon. Side note, I'm not a runner and I don't often attend his running events as he has a big group of supportive friends who are keen on running, and usually, he tells me their support is ample and it's not necessary for me to be there. There is also another little twist with this marathon. He signed up for it back in June. It falls on our 23rd wedding anniversary. We have had multiple discussions in the months since he signed up, and he knows I am annoyed that he allowed his friends to talk him into signing up, at the finish line of a half marathon, to an event that will impact and dominate our entire anniversary weekend. Without the courtesy of discussing it with me first, I was at that half marathon. He got to the finish line, went and saw all his friends who were still in the competitors area, signed up for the marathon, and then came and found me, with the spectators, to tell me about it. There was no reason why he couldn't have included me in the decision-making process. I was standing just meters away. Needless to say, the accusation of failing some secret, unspecified test left me absolutely stunned. I know he had a rough time in his last couple of days overseas, but it wasn't much of a picnic at home either. I reminded him that I had to make a decision, just moments after having it confirmed that our beloved pet of 2 decades required euthanasia. To either race home, drop her off and rush out to the airport, or come home and prepare a nice dinner. I couldn't do both. I continued that I was feeling low too, because our cat, who was almost the same age as our youngest son, was dying, and I had been so preoccupied trying to keep her calm and comfortable that I hadn't had time to do so much as plan for dinner. I had been crying all day and watching her suffer. I also pointed out that the time span between the vet appointment and his flight landing was finite, and there was a possibility, as he wasn't expecting me, that he could have landed and got into an Uber before I even made it to the airport. In which case, he'd have had no airport greeting and no dinner. He reiterated that the roast was lovely and appreciated, but he still would have preferred I met him at the airport on this occasion. I guess after 23 years of marriage, telepathy was somehow added to the job description without so much as a memo. The last few days have been tough on everyone. We're all raw and emotional. So his comment to me over breakfast still echoes in my head. Is it possible that I failed the supportive wife test by choosing to cook a roast dinner for my husband rather than meeting him at the airport on the evening I was told our 19-year-old cat needed to be put to sleep? Stories number 9. Entitled Mum. I was standing in line for a train ticket. Had a Lulu Guinness handbag with me. In front of me was a family. Male, never turned round, female 30-ish, and small girl, 4. The girl was all over the place as youngsters sometimes are, but that wasn't a problem. Until she stood in front of me and hit my handbag. I ignored her. She hit it again. Then again. Mother did nothing. I moved my bag to my side and said, "Don't do that, that's naughty," in a mild tone. The mother stroked her hair and said, "Oh, she's only 4, she doesn't understand." I said, "And are you going to pay the £400 for this handbag if she scratches it then? Approximate $500 US. Mother didn't say anything to me but said, "Come stand over here," to her daughter, and moved her out the way. Father never turned round. Peace was restored. Stories number 10. This is why so many young people come here thinking they ruined their lives. So we've been seeing a lot of posts like that lately. The quality of the sub has gone up a lot thanks to the mods running this place. But it's a meme at this point to see a post frantically titled something like "I've ruined my life and there's no turning back. What do I do, please help?" And the first thing we see after clicking is "I'm a 21-year-old. And we all groan. Because of course this person hasn't fucked their life up 98% of the time. So what is happening, then? My post aims to help users foster some patience and understanding for our forlorn younglings in search of a path. I saw my life branching out before me like the green fig tree in the story. From the tip of every branch, like a fat purple fig, a wonderful future beckoned and winked. I saw myself sitting in the crotch of this fig tree, starving to death, just because I couldn't make up my mind which of the figs I would choose. I wanted each and every one of them, but choosing one meant losing all the rest, and, as I sat there, unable to decide, the figs began to wrinkle and go black. And, one by one, they plopped to the ground at my feet. Sylvia Plath, the bell jar. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or fester like a sore, and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat? Or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? Langston Hughes. When these young upstarts come here begging for help to fix their hopelessly broken lives, what's happening is they're seeing their event horizon narrow. They're experiencing what we all have. When we were young, our future was only as limited as our imagination. We could become anything. As we grow, we face the terrifying reality that we can fail. We can mess up, lose opportunities, and waste time. We imagine a future for ourselves, and sometimes reality shows us that future, where we're 23, making 6 figures, on our way to all our dreams in comfort and style. It's not going to happen. That is what these kids mean when they think they fucked their lives. In a way they did. Because they imagined a single life for themselves. A single branch with a single figure. And that fig rotted. That grape turned to a raisin. So the key is to help them see that their fixation on one reality for themselves, only one future where they can be okay, safe, happy, that's an illusion of their youth. Some of these people have spent their entire conscious lives imagining what their future will be, so it can be a serious loss of identity when they confront this reality that they must adapt. They hold up the rare few who know what they want from a young age and actually get it as the rule, instead of the exception. Okay, essay over. Just thought this may help some users here give advice, or maybe a young person feeling hopeless can see this and gain a deeper perspective. Love y'all. Stories number 11. Just saved a dude's life, and he pointed a pew-pew at me 2 hours prior. This happened about an hour ago, kinda just need to vent. I went to a party, and was having fun when a dude called me a slur. I live in a racist area but my buddies say stuff sometimes and I think it's funny, but a dude I don't know doing it drives me nuts and makes me mad. I let it slide because don't want to throw the vibes off. A couple minutes goes by and he points a loaded gun at me right after calling me a slur, and I didn't know exactly what to do besides sit there. He said it was a joke and I threatened to end his life if he ever tried to play that joke on me again. A couple hours go by and he collapsed having a seizure, and stopped breathing. We got him into a truck after calling an ambulance and drove about 20 minutes going well over the speed limit, while I was giving him cardiopulmonary resuscitation the whole time. I got him breathing and then he would stop again. I felt like I watched him die 4 times, and I still feel like I'm in the truck giving CPR. We got him into an ambulance and sent him on his way, but I still feel trapped in that moment. My arms are tired and I am having a mental breakdown. Hope he's okay. But I genuinely hope he knows a slur just saved his life. Little info, I'm Hispanic so you can guess the slur if you like. Stories number 12. I told my mom she needed to do something about her marriage and now she locked herself up in her room. I don't know where I'm supposed to post this but here goes nothing. I'm pretty young so I might not know anything about marriage, but I know that a spouse has to be there for you, talk to you, treat you kindly, respect you, all those bare minimum things. However, whenever I come back home for the weekend, I study elsewhere, my mom and dad don't talk to each other. I've given it time, but it's still the same. I know it's my father's fault because I've known both of them all my life. I know how they are. He can't even talk to her about things that must be talked about. For example, my mom once spent the night at her sister's place, and that night, my dad fainted on the floor. He didn't call her to tell her, and he didn't pick up when she called him. She only knew when I came home, and he told me, so I told her. Today at breakfast, 1 hour ago, I talked to my mom about all of this, how tired I am of coming home to a tense environment, and my father blaming menial things on her when he talks to me. I also told her that in this relationship, she gains nothing, and he gains everything, clean home, clothes, food served, etc., and that she must demand respect. But she suddenly get up and locked herself in her bedroom. I kept calling for her through the door, but she didn't reply to me. Update, I got in her room and asked her to talk to me, but she just ignored me. Stories number 13. My toddler told the nurse he loves her. I unexpectedly had to take my toddler to the doctor early yesterday morning. Intense cough, he's okay. It was our normal clinic but a different nurse and doctor than we usually see. My son was exhausted from being up all night. The doctor examined him and asked us to stick around for a few minutes because the nurse had some things for us. She came in a few minutes later and gave us what we needed. My son enthusiastically said thank you. She thanked him for starting her morning off with a smile. As she walked out the door, my son screamed I love you. She knocked, came back in, and asked what he said. I told her he said he loves her. She told us that made her day. I really believe my son's main goal in life is to spread joy, and that makes me so proud. Stories number 14. Wedding guest smeared his bloody hands all over the walls of the venue. This happened a few years ago, but it was by far the worst wedding experience we have ever had at our venue apart from the one wedding we had to shut down. It was actually a +1 of a wedding guest who did this. His date who was invited, let him know that her ex-boyfriend was there that night. I don't know the story with the ex or anything, but whatever it was did not excuse her date's behavior. He got so angry that this girl's ex was there, that he walked outside and punched out a light fixture on a stone post outside the front doors, with his bare fist. We saw it happen on our security cameras later, and while his hands were bleeding, literally dripping blood, he walked back to the front doors and wrestled with the door trying to slam them behind him as he walked back inside it but couldn't. Our doors all have soft closures on them so it was kind of funny to watch him try to slam them and couldn't. He was wrestling with the doors because they would not slam. Dude comes back inside the building and wipes his bloody hands all over the white sheetrock inside the lobby, all down the long hallway, on wooden posts outside the bathroom, and all over the white bathroom walls. It was a ton of blood. We had an event the next day for 400 people. It was a church event. We couldn't even paint over it. Do you know how hard it is to paint white over blood? It doesn't cover. We had to put up big room dividers so the guests for that day couldn't go that way in the building and had to use different bathrooms. And the craziest thing is that we adored the couple who was getting married. Just goes to show, even if you're a nice couple, people at your wedding can still do awful things and it will be completely unexpected. This is what a damage deposit is for. Also if you are invited to a wedding and don't respect the venue and vendors they have hired, you're a grade A asshole. He was arrested by the way. His date was too drunk by the time this happened and was sitting in our event office sobbing and hitting her head on the table repeatedly. We tried to take care of her and felt bad for her, but my God. People truly do not understand what event professionals have to suffer and deal with. I will say the guy did come to our venue a few days later and talked to my boss. He apologized for what happened and agreed to pay what it cost to fix the light fixture and all the repainting in the venue. He definitely is a toxic human being and was totally doing it so we would drop all charges. But we did. Dropped all charges as long as it was paid for. We're not out to punish people honestly as long as they apologize and own up to it. But damn. Stories number 15. Am I the asshole? For telling my friend she's not fit to date anyone. My 22F friend, 25F, Rachel, has a long history of failed relationships. Most of the time she considers herself the victim of her toxic ex-partners except for one specific person, Nate, 24M. They dated for a year a few years ago, they ended on good terms, but she never kept a secret how devastated he was after their breakup. She left him on his birthday because he was too nice to her, and it was boring. I know it sounds crazy and I don't want to play the devil's advocate, but that can happen in victims of abusive partners who are not healed. I can't tell for sure how both parts felt through their breakup, but Rachel moved on easily and, from what mutual friends said, Nate was really heartbroken, didn't cope in the healthiest way. I won't get into details but you can imagine. I don't know him that well but to me he seemed very sensitive and she too confirmed he does tend to get a very low mood easily. Eventually they both went on with their lives and dated other people. I recently met with Rachel and she told me she had some new gossip about Nate. She ran into him and they talked and she was so proud to announce how sad he looked compared to when they were together despite being in a relationship now. She now feels irreplaceable and she knows she will always be on his mind. I told her that, whether that's true or not, this is something I wouldn't brag about, and at this point she should be at least aware of how she hurt him, voluntarily or not. She said she was a victim herself, so I was basically blaming someone who suffered abuse in a relationship of being a bad person for breaking up with someone. That's when I might have taken it too far. I told her that her history of abuse is not a free pass for enjoying traumatizing people, and doing it will not remove what happened to her. I also told her that she doesn't seem emotionally mature and she should heal from her trauma before putting herself out to other people, and right now she's definitely still not in a position to be in a healthy relationship, both for her and for the other person. Stories number 16. Am I the asshole for refusing to take a DNA test even though my dad wants me to? A month ago, I, 19M, found out my mom had an affair around the time I was conceived. A couple of days later, my dad asked me if I'd be willing to take a DNA test. This was hard on me. Growing up, I always felt like my dad liked my brothers more than me. He would always be more interested in doing things with them, and I just thought it was because he had different personalities. I never thought that it might be because I wasn't his biological son. When my dad asked for the DNA test, I told him I didn't want to do it. I don't want to know, and I don't want him to think differently of me if it turns out I'm not his biological son. He told me that he wouldn't think differently of me and was just ready to know the truth. I told him that I didn't believe him because I felt that he always liked my brothers more than me, and I asked him if it was because he didn't think I was his. He told me that this was his first time hearing that and told me that he loved us all equally. He said that he was hurt that I thought he didn't like me and never went to him about it. He said that the possibility of me not being his never left his mind, but he just couldn't connect with me as well as he could with my brothers, and apologized for making me feel that way. This didn't make me feel any better. He asked again for a DNA test and I told him that I did not want one and I wasn't going to change my mind. When I told him that, he told me that he understood and to let him know if I ever did. A couple of days after that, my brothers basically tried to confront me about it. They told me that they talked to Dad and they believe that I'm being selfish. They said it's been on his mind for years and he has a right to know, and so do they. They said I should at least give my DNA sample to our dad so he can know, but I don't want to do that. I'm currently not speaking with my mom and I don't plan to anytime soon. I'm pretty sure my brothers and my dad are upset with me too. My dad is telling me he's not upset and he understands, but the way my brothers are acting I'm not really sure. My boyfriend told me that he sees both sides but think my dad does have a right to know and think I should do it because it's just prolonging the inevitable. I don't think I'm prolonging anything because I never want to find out. If my dad says he wouldn't change the way he'll treat me or see me with, I don't think the test is necessary. Stories number 17. After a lot of back and forth, I decided to go through with the DNA test. I felt pressured and just gave in. It was terrifying and I regretted doing it initially. I was scared to know and scared of what would happen if I wasn't actually my dad's. I was feeling a lot of feelings and often cried waiting for the results. When the results came in, it turned out that he is my dad. That's exactly what I wanted, but it still felt wrong in a way. I'm not sure how to explain it. I just felt and still feel sad. I know he said nothing would have changed, but I know things would have. I just felt that if he knew I wasn't his, he wouldn't want anything to do with me. Not that he has anyway. When I originally wrote my post I said I wouldn't talk to my mom anytime soon. I lied. I think I started talking to her about 2-ish weeks after, not exactly sure. I wanted answers and kinda to understand her a little bit more. My mom and I are still not as close as we used to be, but not talking to her either made me sad as well, so I'm kinda in the middle. I was never close with my dad or my brothers, so when I lost that trust and connection with my mom I really only had my boyfriend left. If I didn't have him I would genuinely feel alone right now. My dad has been trying and I appreciate that in a way. He keeps trying to invite me to places and stuff. I went a few times but I kinda just felt out of place. He rarely did this before the test and it's making me sad that he's doing it now. When I hang out with him it feels forced. My boyfriend tries to tell me that I might be making it up in my head, and I might be, but I don't know how to address it with my dad. On the bright side, my family did apologize to me. Stories number 18. Am I the asshole for losing my composure at a family gathering? I ended up calling my brother out in front of our family at a recent gathering. My 40M bag, basically a fanny pack, was sitting on a table at the entrance of where we were. The bag contains my keys, phone, kids' meds, etc. I watched my brother, 30M, pick up my bag and take it into another room. I soon made my way to where he was and asked him to hand it over, stating I observed him pick it up and walk away with it. With a smile on his face, he suggested I go tattle on him, stating, "No one will believe you, I always win, go ahead, see what happens," while claiming he doesn't have it. I made my way to the room where his wife was, stating what had happened and asked for her help. She went and talked to him, returning to tell me he didn't have it and for me to leave him alone. He sticks his head around the corner and smirks, mouthing, "Told ya so." I gathered my partner and our kid and said we needed to leave. I didn't swear or name call, but I was not calm, cool or collected in my haste. This isn't the first time something like this has happened, being on the receiving end of his nonsense. I was reprimanded by a handful of people for being over the top, and that my behavior was concerning. Eventually he disclosed where he hid my bag, we then left immediately. I am usually happy-go-lucky, I have the disposition of a ska band. I will never understand blaming a victim for reacting with big emotions to something they shouldn't have endured in the first place. If this isn't the appropriate perspective and there is a better position to take, I would like to understand why and what I could do differently when involved with these situations. Stories number 19. Am I the asshole? For wanting to give up my son after discovering he isn't mine. The situation is nothing short of a clusterfuck. I'm angry, depressed and sad, and I don't know what to do. Throwaway. I, 32 am shattered and don't know where to turn. My wife passed away last month, only 7 months after giving birth to our son. She developed peripartum cardiomyopathy, a rare and severe form of heart failure that can occur in the months following childbirth. Despite the doctor's best efforts, she didn't survive. Losing her so suddenly has left me heartbroken and in a state of constant grief. 3 weeks ago, my wife's best friend came over to visit. She was visibly nervous and eventually told me she had something sensitive to share. After some hesitation, she revealed that my wife had confided in her that she'd been unfaithful around the time our son was conceived and that there was a chance he might not be mine. I was stunned and angry. My wife's best friend was telling me this only weeks after my wife's death, and it felt like an attempt to tarnish her memory. I couldn't believe it. I told her to leave and not to come back, convinced she was lying or trying to shift blame onto me somehow. The whole thing felt like a betrayal, and I tried to push the thought out of my mind. But once the idea was planted, it wouldn't go away. I kept wondering, what if she was telling the truth? After days of tormenting myself with this possibility, I decided to get a DNA test. It wasn't an easy decision, I felt guilty for even considering it, but I needed closure. Yesterday, the results came back. My worst fears were confirmed, my son isn't biologically mine. Now, I'm in turmoil. I loved my wife, and I wanted to believe our son was a piece of her and me together. But knowing he's not biologically mine has left me feeling lost and betrayed. I keep looking at him, trying to feel the same bond, but the pain of my wife's infidelity is so fresh, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to move past it. I feel awful even considering it, but I don't know if I can raise him on my own. The betrayal I feel is overwhelming, and I don't know if I'm capable of giving him the love and care he deserves. It's breaking my heart, and I feel like a failure, but I also feel like I'm not equipped to give him the life he deserves. Am I the asshole? Edit, I hadn't thought of contacting the friend, but I will now. The replies have really solidified what I have been feeling. The child is innocent, but I don't think I'd be able to love or care for him as well as I should. Informing the family will be my first step, then contacting the AP, if possible. Adoption is going to be my last resort. Many of you may believe I'm a monster, but put yourself in my situation, I hope you all understand. Edit 2, so I called her friend, I apologized for my behavior, but also asked why she did not inform me as soon as she knew. She said her loyalties laid with her friend more than me. Okay, fine. I asked her about the AP, she said she doesn't know as it was a one-time thing. Apparently, it happened during her work time, whatever that meant, and during daytime as she'd been told. I mean, I'm not fully understanding, but it seems like she fucked a guy when she was supposed to be working. Many of you are suggesting I go through her phone or other social contacts, but I don't know any passwords. I never doubted her. We weren't controlling of each other, and had and gave plenty of privacy. The next step is informing the family, both mine and hers. I'm adding another thing, I don't hate the baby, and I'm not so deranged I'd throw him out of the house. Whatever happens according to procedure. I'm not going to instantly abandon a kid just because he isn't mine. Stories number 20. I kicked out my friend Isael from my party because she was disrespectful in my house. Okay, so I need to know if I'm in the wrong in this situation. My sister Catherine, F20, her fiancé Body, M23, and I, F19, had some friends and family over. Our friend group involves a lot of people that are related or roommates, so I'd say we are pretty close. Every Saturday we have a get-together at my house with food and drinks and games. Yesterday, we had my cousins over, F17 and F18, my brother, M17, our friend Brittany, F20, and her brother Matt, M21, and his fiancée Katie, F19, and our friend Benson, M22. Benson is gay, my sister is pregnant, and my brother drives a motorcycle. Relevant info. The night started out great, but once Matt and Katie arrived the vibe changed drastically. We had never met Katie before, and when she first arrived we all was friendly and was asking her questions and trying to make her feel comfortable. She was very quiet and a little standoffish. About an hour later, the adults were starting to drink and the game started. We was playing murder. Everyone puts their heads down, narrator picks a killer and a doctor, killer silently kills a player, the doctor has to save someone without knowing who died, and everyone has to try and vote out the killer. About an hour into the game, Katie became the narrator. When she would announce who died she made up these insane scenarios on how they died. She said my 17-year-old cousin died from OD, my brother died in a car accident, Benson died from AIDS, and my sister died from childbirth. She gave really gruesome stories and details. And it made us really uncomfortable. But we just put it to the side and didn't say anything. A little bit later she started behaving strangely. Like, I'm talking stumbling over, laying on the grass, falling over, talking about weirdly intimate details of her and her fiancé's sex life, and spilling drinks on people. My sister told her to walk normal, or to get off the grass before she gets fleas, and she stood up easily and patted herself off. She had had like 2 beers. That's it. When she first started behaving like that, I sent my brother and cousins into the house because I didn't want them seeing a grown adult act in such a manner. Around midnight, she walked into the house and went into the fridge. Me and Benson was in the kitchen and she didn't ask, nor acknowledge that we was in the room. She grabbed another beer and some Chinese food leftover of mine from the fridge. She started to walk out when she dropped the take out on the floor and doubled over, puking onto my floor. Me and Benson stood there in disbelief at what just happened. I got Matt from outside and told him to take her home. Now Matt is saying I was being rude to Katie and that I should apologize for making her feel unwelcome. I'm extremely confused about this whole thing. There was other issues that went on with her behavior and I wasn't rude even a single time. After they left, everyone said that she made them feel uncomfortable and that she wasn't acting right. Stories number 21. He drove drunk and I'm the bad guy. I'm so sad and so tired. Yesterday my, now ex, I guess, boyfriend and I were having some drinks at a place out of town. We had a hotel room for the night. When I go to the bathroom at the bar and come back, he's invited some girl from across the bar to come and talk. Not my vibe but fine, she's nice and we all have a good chat. I keep suggesting that we get the bill and move on to another place but he keeps ordering more drinks. I'm getting annoyed that he's so insistent on talking to her after like an hour and I'm texting him that we should go. He's not checking his phone so I start nudging him under the table, smacking his leg, tugging his coat, etc. and he ignores it all. So finally when we leave and walk back to the hotel, we're both quite drunk and I'm not sure on the details of the walk but at one point I grabbed his coat to physically stop him. Obviously I should not have physically put hands on him at all, on the walk or at the bar. I'm not going to make excuses. I shouldn't have done it. By the time we get back to the hotel we're fully fighting about how I wanted to leave the bar and but wasn't listening to me, how I shouldn't have smacked him under the table or grabbed at his jacket, and he grabs all of his stuff from the room and storms to the parking lot. It's pitch dark. We are both way too drunk to drive anywhere. I'm begging him not to drive, I'm telling him to stay at the hotel and I will leave. I'll walk to another hotel as long as he doesn't drive. He says, fuck you, my name, gets in his truck and peels away. I'm like what the fuck because home is a good 1.5 hours away, in the dark, with other people on the road, and the bottom line is he's too fucking drunk to drive. He doesn't say where he's going, I'm left to assume he's driving back home. The only information I have is that he's angry, drunk, and drove away and I don't know where he's going. So I call the police. I knew that it would be unforgivable to him, but I felt like I had to make the responsible choice to try to get him off the road for his own sake and the safety of the others on the road. The police call me back and come really quickly. I give them what little info I have and as far as I know they didn't find him on the road. He messages and calls me later that I'm trying to ruin his life, and that a DUI is no joke, and it's like yeah. Exactly. It turns out he didn't drive home, he apparently went to some other hotel or something, I don't know exactly, but at least he was not actually on the road anymore thank God and the police didn't catch up with him. Which I'm grateful for because I actually don't want his life to get fucked with a DUI despite everything. I was put in the shitty position of either letting him take off in that state and potentially not stopping an even worse situation, or calling the cops and ruining our relationship. If he'd killed or hurt himself or someone else I could never live with myself if I didn't do anything to stop it. I chose to do what I know in my bones was the right thing but I feel like absolute fucking shit right now. Just total fucking shit. I don't know why I'm posting. I know what the replies will be. I'm just so frustrated that I'm now the bad guy who overreacted in his mind, not the one who got behind a wheel drunk and angry. Like it's so clear what had to happen. And I'm being punished for it and that's not fucking fair. Stories number 22. All in one by threatening full custody if my ex-wife takes only our daughter on a lavish vacation. My 35M ex-wife, 32F, and I divorced 2 years ago after a rough split. We share 2 kids, a 12-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. My ex has always been that fun parent, while I handle the day-to-day stuff. She recently got engaged to a wealthy guy and has been spending a lot of money on experiences for the kids, which I get, but it's starting to create issues. Here's the problem, my ex announced she's taking our daughter on a trip to Paris. Just her and our daughter, not our son. When I asked why, she said it was a bonding experience, because our daughter loves art, and this was her way of making up for time missed when she was young. I get that. But I see how hurt my son is by it. He asked why he isn't going, and she brushed it off, saying she'd take him somewhere, someday. I don't think that's fair. I believe both kids should have the same experiences, or it'll cause resentment. I told her it wasn't okay to just leave him out, especially after he's already been struggling with the divorce and feeling like he's less loved by her. I then took it a step further and said if she goes through with this, I'll file for full custody because she's emotionally neglecting our son. Now she's furious, calling me controlling and saying I'm punishing her for moving on and having the means to provide better experiences for the kids. She accused me of wanting them to be miserable just because I can't afford the same. That's not true. I just want both kids to feel equally valued. She's still planning on going, and I'm digging my heels in. The kids don't know about the custody threat, but my family thinks I'm overreacting and should let it go. Am I overreacting by trying to stop this trip? Stories number 23. My 33F husband, 34M, fell in love with another woman and wants to try polyamory. Hi. I've been married to my hubby for 4 years and we've been together for 12 years. After a lot of financial struggle, we bought a house and we are now planning to get kids. Thing is, a few months ago, my husband fell sick and had to stay home for a while. He decided to pick up an online game and started having weekly sessions with a group of players. Among them is a girl, 30, I think, and long story short, he fell in love with her. He broke down crying a month ago and admitted it. He told me it built up so gradually he didn't understand how he felt until it was too late. They started texting privately after meeting and eventually had one-on-one calls together. Then at some point, he said, she told him she was in love with him and he realized it was mutual. He said he told her it was impossible but loved her too. They tried to be just friends but they couldn't resist and continued to show affection for each other. He showed me the texts, but also venture into sexting. She asked if she could meet him face to face but he refused. So he told me all of this, apologized over and over again, told me he couldn't control himself and while he loved us both, it was me he would choose no matter what. I was still very upset and slept at a friend's that night to gather my thoughts. I decided to forgive him because he clearly felt guilt and wanted to work it out. I told him that while I was deeply hurt, I still appreciated him coming forward to me and being honest about what happened. We got into long conversations about how we were feeling in our relationship. I accepted he could love someone else but said I didn't like how he handled it. He agreed. And then yesterday he asked if I was comfortable opening up the marriage to polyamory. He said he still wanted to live with me and have kids but can't erase nor ignore the feelings he has for her. He says he wants to do it right and let us both see other people, with clear boundaries and communication and still be present for one another. I'm gonna be honest, it made me very uncomfortable at first. We have several friends who are poly, I know more or less how it works. But I never really thought about getting into it myself. I am not against, it just never crossed my mind before. I am trying to think it through but it's a lot to take in. Sorry my writing is probably messy but it's kind of hard to focus. I guess it's too early to decide and we have a lot more to discuss beforehand, but still, could you guys give me your opinions on this? Thanks a lot. First off, sorry I didn't reply to all your comments. I am very thankful for them, they helped me realize hard, but fair, truths about the whole situation. I waited for a bit to think about it all and had multiple long discussions with my husband. I wanted to confront him before making a final decision. To answer some of your questions, the other girl wanted to meet him, but they never did. Partly because my husband refused, but honestly, mostly because she lives too far from here. I still got checked for STDs, though, and I'm clean, yay. As for our polyamory friends, they apparently were the ones who suggested him to go down the polyamory road. I stopped talking to them for now, I'll deal with the bigger problem first. I told him his actions hurt me deeply and that while I appreciated him admitting his affair, it was still infidelity. I told him what you guys said, that turning it into polyamory was merely greenlighting the affair after the fact. That polyamory should be built on mutual trust and communication, which he already broke. That I didn't feel respected. It destroyed him. He said he already knew, deep down, but didn't want to admit it, neither to me nor to himself. We both screamed and cried a lot. He finally admitted he wanted to open the marriage for selfish reasons. He is very sorry. He cut off contact with the other girl, let me fully access his computer and phone, and now wants to go to counseling to repair our relationship and marriage. He is showing me a lot of affection and attention since then, although he admits himself it's sometimes out of guilt and not just out of pure love. And now I want to make it work too, but... am I? Or is it sunk cost fallacy? I don't know. Our first session is in 2 months, the earliest we could get, and every day I change my mind. Literally yesterday I wanted to leave him, while today I think it's worth giving it a try. Because we've known each other for so long, we understand each other on a very deep level, share a lot of interests, and have already built so much together. He was there for me during hard parts of my life. He took responsibility for his actions and is really trying. Plus, if I leave him, I'd have to start my life nearly from scratch, find a new place to live, go back into dating for the first time in 12 years. I don't want to lose everything. It sounds very hard and scary. Am I not too old for this? But at the same time, that's a form of denial, isn't it? It doesn't matter if those years were good, it's not going to be the same. Even if he gains my trust back, even if I forgive him, I'll never forget. I think he is genuinely remorseful, but isn't it too late for that? I am too empathetic, him being present now doesn't erase what was done. Do I want to stay not because I still believe in this relationship, but because don't have the strength to ask for a divorce? Because it's the easy choice, some kind of codependency? I have no idea. I can picture both paths clearly, and it's tearing me apart. I am lost, maybe even more than I was when I wrote my previous post. I've lost sleep and appetite, and I'm not sure I enjoy anything in my life anymore. I booked an appointment with a psychologist, for me alone, to help with this whole thing. I am sorry, at this point, I am rambling. I know I am the only one who can decide what's okay and comfortable for me or not. It's ultimately my choice and my choice only. The emotional hell I am going through just makes thinking about that choice very hard and paralyzing. I'll go to both therapies and try to see what to do from here. I'll try to update, but it's probably going to take a while. I am sorry. I want to thank you again for your support, and I am sending you guys a lot of love. Edit. A couple of infos I should have mentioned but didn't because putting all of that into writing without omitting something is much harder than I thought. He cut off contact with her because once he told him he was married and wanted us both, she just ran away and broke up with him. There are times since then where my husband starts feeling sad or angry because of what's basically withdrawal. And for that he's smart, least sensible enough not to blame me. What kind of marriage did we have before this crisis? It will sound so naive. It's my first and only romantic relationship. We were very close and basically grew as adults together. We could talk about anything and understand each other. We shared the same values and interests. What changed? I think. Is that we got into a routine and he got bored. During our argument he said he was addicted to the attention the girl was giving him and that he felt I didn't show him I was in love with him enough anymore. I told him that even if it was true, he should have told me instead of having an affair. On one hand I have my faults too and I could accept this as one of them, on the other I was taking care of him and the house while he was sick. I don't think he believes it, I don't think he means it. But it makes me wonder whether I was actually a good wife for him, even though I am not responsible for his actions. Thanks again for your support y'all. It's a lot to process but it helps me so much. So, soon-to-be ex-husband had an emotional affair online and tried to make me greenlight it by asking for an open marriage, where we'd be allowed to have side adventures. I refused and his affair partner dumped him. He begged me to try to reconcile with him, to which I agreed while I was actually trying to prepare my exit. We both went to individual therapy, still am. We separated temporarily 3 times, but every time I came back, it went terribly. He was desperate. He kept trying to cross my boundaries, love bombing me, playing the victim, asking to touch me even though I established I didn't want to, threatening to kill himself if we were to divorce. I could go on and on. This made me finally realize, along with my therapist's help, lot of self-reflection and my exchanges on Reddit, that I was in an abusive relationship. Which is an important part, actually the most important part, of this update. Please look up definitions and examples of abuse, because I had no idea that what my husband had been doing all these years, even before the affair, counted as such. In his case it was psychological abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, guilt-tripping, blame-shifting, emotional blackmail. Nothing aggressive or mean. Which turned me into a very submissive partner over the years, always catering to his needs while erasing mine. I rationalized everything. It happened subtly and gradually and I was too naive to see it for what it was. His emotional affair and open marriage proposal were the natural continuity of that. Of course, the more I tried to get away from him, the more manipulative he got. Now that I was aware of it, I knew what he was doing, but fighting years of conditioning, even if you recognize it and succeed, is fucking exhausting and disarming. So, earlier today, I brought a friend home to assist me. We sat down, the three of us, and I told my husband we were over and I handed him the papers. It might sound dumb but it's genuinely one of the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I was terrified. Yet he agreed. He repeatedly asked me if I was sure. He reminded me of the family we were planning to have and of our best memories together. Was it all for nothing? Apparently, yes. He was heartbroken. Clearly mad and frustrated. But still, he agreed. He signed them and went back to his parents for now. We still have to go through the whole procedure, separate our assets, decide what to do with the house and all. And he still wants us to go to marriage counseling. But right now, I feel free, for the first time in months. The last hours have been a mix of tears, celebration and godly, restful sleep. And I have to thank you guys again, because my first Reddit post was the wake-up call I needed to eventually, finally, get here. Better late than never IG. Thank you so much. After my soon-to-be ex-husband signed the divorce papers, we went no contact, or at least, I tried to. He still sent me text messages, voice messages, and tried to call me multiple times. He even sent me a long letter full of statements such as, "I'm concerned that your mental health is deteriorating. I believe you need antidepressants to help you feel like yourself again," or, "Your trauma is understandable, but it probably makes you want to punish me by making irrational decisions, like divorce," or, "I am afraid you are surrounding yourself with questionable influences that have bad agendas. Please let me help you see it through." He claimed that the crisis was just as hard for him as it was for me. People told me he was escalating and that I should protect myself. I should have listened immediately, but I didn't react soon enough. Then he came to our street. He arrived uninvited and pleaded with me to give him a second chance. He said he wanted to be there for me and for us, insisting that he didn't deserve any of this. I started to feel distressed. He saw that I was unwell and wanted to comfort me, so he hugged me. But I didn't want to be touched. I'm pretty sure I told him no. I think I screamed no multiple times, but my memory is fuzzy. Either I misremember, or I did say no and he ignored it and didn't stop. I know it's just a hug, but it triggered a severe panic attack. He called emergency services, telling them he was worried about me because I wasn't myself. I had to ask the paramedics to make him leave. After that, he told me he was there for me if I needed him, but he thought we needed space. He contacted half our social circle to inform them that I was unwell and needed support, our mutual friends, my colleagues, our neighbors, my physician. People reached out of the blue to ask if I was okay. I became paranoid, unsure of who to trust anymore. Close friends, my therapist, and people here helped me see things more clearly. My lawyer filed a restraining order against him, but unfortunately, it was refused. Not enough concrete evidence of a threat, apparently. I want to scream. We submitted a second request, which is currently being reviewed. In the meantime, I've moved into an apartment of my own. He doesn't know where I live. Hell, almost nobody does. I constantly wonder how he reacted when he found out. I'm still paying my half of the mortgage because nothing has been decided regarding our house yet. It's financially very hard for me, but I do feel safer. I am feeling much better, although I remain haunted by constant stress, sleep disorders, nightmares, nervous tics, random bursts of tears, and rushes of anxiety. My physician prescribed me sedatives. They do make it easier. I realize I'm isolating myself more and more. I try to fight it, but I'm really afraid that sensitive information could leak, even accidentally. I've started reaching out to my closest friends again, as much as I can. I am trying to come back here on Reddit. I keep going to therapy. It's necessary. Because one part of me, the part he cultivated for so long, urges me to stop all of this, to go back to the house, cancel the restraining order, cancel the divorce, call him, apologize, and repair our relationship. It would be insane. I am not going to do that. I do not listen to that little voice. I don't. But when your defenses are attacked over and over again, it becomes incredibly hard to reason properly. I can't wait for the divorce to be over. I just want to move on. I want all of this to be behind me. I'm sorry this is bleak. I wish I would have left sooner. I just hope this can help someone, anyone. Stories number 24. My 38F husband, 40M, pushed me when I asked him about a weird text he received and refused to show me his phone. I am unsure what to do now. This is a throwaway. I will keep it short and with few details as possible to avoid being identified. My husband and I have been married over 10 years. The last several years have been very, very difficult for us. We had been trying to conceive and failing, and this put a lot of stress on our marriage. I have been very vocal and public about our fertility struggles offline and online. After many rounds of IVF, I finally became pregnant and I am currently in my second trimester. From the beginning, the pregnancy has been really rough on me. I had severe morning sickness, high blood pressure, and my pregnancy was considered high risk. Our marriage has been under a lot of stress and this is exacerbated by the fact that we haven't had sex once since I got pregnant, largely because I feel completely shitty most days. Earlier today, my husband's phone kept pinging with notifications. I instinctively picked it up to see who it was messaging him. The messages were from a female friend of his. She is a relatively new friend. From what I briefly saw before he walked into the house, he had been taking out the garbage, and snatched the phone from my hands. It seemed he had been complaining about me and our sex life to this friend. I confronted him and asked him to open the message so I could read what he'd been saying about me. He got really angry and pushed me hard when I tried to take the phone back from him and I fell on the floor. He immediately apologized and helped me get back up and I could tell he felt really bad. When I again tried to ask him about the message, he still wouldn't show me the phone, kept deflecting, saying it was nothing. He was just complaining to a friend that the pregnancy has been difficult and that was all. I am not convinced. The texts that I saw briefly were more than what he was letting on. He refused to show me his phone for proof on the grounds of we need to have trust. I know he doesn't across that way in this post, but he really is a good, loving and supportive husband. He has never laid a hand on me, but I can't deny the uneasy feeling I have following his actions. Edit. Reading all your comments is making me rethink the severity of his actions. Don't get me wrong, I knew it was very wrong, it was one of the reasons I turned to Reddit for advice. What do I do now? He is very protective and possessive of me and the pregnancy. What if he doesn't like it if I leave? Would me and my baby be in danger? Edit 2, thank you all for the comments. You have opened my eyes to a lot of his behaviors, which I didn't consider to be an issue before. I wanted to go in for a checkup yesterday after the fall but he said it wasn't necessary because the fall wasn't too hard and not to worry. But, I will go to the hospital for a checkup when he's out of the house today. Stories number 25. Follow policy. Okay. On mobile so standard apologies for formatting and English being my first language. TDLR, new boss insists I follow every company policy to the letter, so I do, and bring the entire office to a grinding halt. A few years back, I worked in a corporate office where things ran pretty smoothly, until our new boss, Mr. Micromanage, Mr. M, arrived. Mr. M was obsessed with one thing, following company policies. He didn't care if policies were outdated, inefficient, or outright absurd. If the rule existed, you had to follow it perfectly. And he loved catching people not complying. One Monday morning, he called a meeting to lecture us on policy adherence. He ended his speech with, if it's in the manual, you follow it. No exceptions. I'm not a fan of being micromanaged, but hey, rules are rules, right? I knew that our company's policy manual hadn't been updated in years, and some policies were questionable. So, I decided to have a little fun. One of the most outdated rules was about how to handle printed documents. According to this gem, any printed company document, no matter how minor, needed to be reviewed and stamped by our document compliance officer before being distributed. Oh, and guess what? That position had been eliminated in a round of budget cuts 2 years ago. But hey, Mr. M said no exceptions. The next day, I printed out a standard quarterly report that everyone in the office needed. When people asked for it, I told them, sorry, I can't distribute it until it's been reviewed and stamped. I sent an email to Mr. M asking where I could find the non-existent document compliance officer. He came storming over to my desk, confused. Mr. M, just send out the report. Me, I'd love to, but as per company policy, it needs to be reviewed and stamped first. Where should I send it? Mr. M pauses and glares, just follow the policy. I nodded enthusiastically and let it be. Word spread quickly, and soon everyone in the office was complying with every arcane policy in the manual. Karen from HR. She started enforcing the dress code policy that required all employees to wear business formal attire at all times. Suddenly, everyone was showing up in suits and ties, and people in accounting were running spreadsheets in cocktail dresses. Jake from marketing. He made sure to send a request to Mr. Micromanage every time he needed to make a 10-cent photocopy, as per the ancient policy that all expenditures, no matter how minor, must be approved by management. By the end of the week, the entire office was a disaster. People were wasting time and resources, projects were delayed, and everyone was cranky from wearing stiff, formal clothes. Mr. M tried to reprimand us, but we just kept saying, sorry, sir. Just following the policies, like you said. It only took 1 week of chaos for Mr. M to call another meeting, where he begrudgingly told us to use common sense instead of following every single policy. He even promised to update the manual. And that, my friends, is how our office turned into a temporary circus of hilarious compliance, until our boss finally learned that some rules are meant to be bent. Stories number 26. My cousin's girlfriend has no idea the impact she has on him. My cousin's been having some problems with his life, and he's going through a depression. Most days all he wears are sweatpants and tees, he'll go a week without showering, he barely eats, doesn't maintain himself at all. But then his girlfriend came down, she lives 5 hours away so they alternate visiting. The day before she came down he showered, got a haircut, worked out, shaved, everything. He transformed from this depressed husk to the guy I grew up with. Since she's been around he's smiling, positive, social, he's not having rage issues or doing drugs, just smoking a little socially. The week before she came down I went to see him and when I left his place I told my mom I didn't think he'd be alive by the following morning. I actually swung by his place just to make sure nobody else had to find him. I saw him yesterday and he was completely different. He was enjoying life. And the thing is she has no idea he's in such rough shape. He's always happy around her so she never sees him at his worst. She's a straight-up guardian angel and she doesn't even know how much everyone appreciates her. Stories number 27. Am I the asshole? For doubting my husband because of an urinary tract infection. My husband and I have been together for 3 years and have a 16-month-old daughter. We have had our issues, arguments, fights to the point of almost divorcing so many times but never about infidelities. He is a hard-working man. He works in the field with tractors and stuff I know nothing about. He used to work like 3 hours away from where we were living and would only come home on weekends and sometimes, when it got busy, only every 14 days. Until I decided to move to where he was working. He would sometimes work all night. A couple times when he came home early, he would smell of perfume. I'd ask him about it and he said that he had no idea where it came from and he couldn't smell any perfume and I just let it go and didn't think about it anymore. Recently I have started getting itchy in my private parts and I thought it was another infection. Because of my body's weak defenses, caused by my very poor eating habits through all my teenage years and a little into my 20s, I'm no stranger to UTIs, and have been hospitalized because of it during my pregnancy. Until one night I noticed some small blister-looking appearances down there. But my husband was sleeping so went to sleep too. The next morning when we woke up, my husband suggested we go buy breakfast cause he was hungry so we did that. When we got home, I made myself a cup of coffee and a cup of tea for him while I told him about the blisters. He told me to Google it and told him that I did and it said it might be STDs. I told him I don't think it was STDs because that would mean one of us had slept with someone else and he got quiet for a bit. Then started saying that you can also just get an STD out of nowhere and it doesn't mean there was another person involved and that I probably just got an infection because of the chemicals we works with, which I thought was totally possible. Then he got up, without even touching his tea or the food we had just bought and when I asked him if we wasn't gonna eat, he said he wasn't hungry and got up to go to work. When I saw him backing up to leave for work without saying goodbye to me or our daughter, I went outside to go tell him goodbye but he was as if lost in his thoughts and just left. Now I don't know what to think. I don't believe him to be a cheater but a lot of things are going through my mind. Stories number 28. Elder brother wants me to buy a motorbike for him. My 32M brother, 34M, wants me to buy a motorbike for him. As bike is a common mode of transport here. He's been asking for a few years now. I told I would buy him one few years back. But then he said he doesn't need one and asked for iPad instead. I suggested him to get a loan from bank and pay via EMIs. However that doesn't work in his case as he is unemployed. He has an online business in his name but he is not making any revenue out of it. My mom recently bought a laptop and he took it to himself. He already has a Mac, and also made my mom buy him a high-end monitor as he said it was necessary for him to do his work. He never made use of it to make money yet. I know my mom is a chronic enabler and she couldn't do any better. He is living with my mom at the moment. My mom gives 70% of her pension money per month to my brother. And with the remaining 30% she runs the house and pays the bills. She cooks and takes care of the house. My brother spends the money on himself and doesn't contribute to household at all. My mother is asking me to buy him a motorbike as the one he uses is old and needed constant repair, which is again paid out of my mom's pocket. My brother is now warming me up to buy him a bike as I'm on a vacation with my family now. It will cost me around $2,500. I have been saving to buy a house. So I can afford to do this expense. But I don't want to. It's impossible to talk to my brother as he doesn't let others talk and starts shouting and make a whole drama and it will mentally exhaust us. So my mom just play along and been enabling him so far. TLDR my unemployed brother, who currently lives with my mom, wants me to make another expensive purchase for him. Stories number 29. Am I the asshole? For telling my stepdaughter that she can leave if she hates us so much. My 39F, husband, 40M, has a daughter, 18F, from his previous marriage, Eliana. She has always been mean towards me and her little sister, 10F. Eliana's mom died while giving birth, so it has always been her and her dad, so I assumed that maybe it was because she feels like we took him from her. I tried my best to make her feel better, but that never happened and things got worse when her little sister was born. She says horrible things about my looks and my body, which hurts because I am very insecure when it comes to my body. She doesn't respect anything I or her father say or any of the rules in the house. She steals stuff from the house. She always finds ways to annoy me, and oh boy does she like to say I hate you. She treats her little sister like poop and doesn't want a relationship with her. She doesn't even answer her phone anymore. Me and my husband have talked about her behavior and tried everything to make it stop, but she gets worse everything we try to fix things as a family. I have suggested therapy, but she doesn't want to do it. She acts like a child. Well, 2 weeks ago was her father's 40th birthday and we had a little surprise party for him. I asked her if she could stay and decorate with us, but she refused, saying that she will go out with her friends. Even when the party started, I called her multiple times to tell her that the party started, but she didn't answer, and she came home after the cake was cut and people were already leaving. She was angry at me for celebrating without her, but I told her that I did try to call her and that she didn't answer. She started accusing me of not wanting her and called me terrible names and said that she hates every one of us, and I told her that if she hates us so much then she can leave. She left the house and hasn't returned yet. We have been calling all of our relatives, but she is not there. Stories number 30. My new employee ran a background check on me and asked me about what he found. 5-year update. I started a new position recently and was promoted quickly to a management position. Great, I have a long supervisory background, looking forward to helping in a wider capacity. One of my direct reports is a very conscientious and ambitious young man named Scott, who I have found pleasant to work with. Last week, during a normal conversation about a project, Scott brought up that he had done a background search on me and then asked me about an arrest on my record, an insurance snafu that led to a driver's license snafu, and when I was pulled over for a normal traffic stop in a rather conservative county, I spent a night in lockup, which was both humiliating and illuminating. This is not immediately Googleable. I gave it a try myself after he brought it up, and some of the specificity of the details he used leads me to believe he went to one of the publicly available background report sites and paid the nominal fee to obtain a detailed report. His question was framed as that he had been doing some research and wanted to clarify what happened in X state, because it wasn't clear if the arrest, was in X or Y state. I lived in Y state more recently, but there's nothing easily found that links the two without paying for it. In the moment, I answered truthfully that these items were from more than a decade ago and were the result of a particular set of circumstances. I then excused myself from the conversation and returned to my office. The longer I think about it, the more weirded out I am. Scott would like to advance and I feel like a follow-up conversation is definitely warranted, but I'm struggling with an approach aside from, hey, you super violated a boundary for me and that will go over like a ton of bricks if you do it with future managers. To be fair, this is an overtly aggressive office culture, and asking to explain your professional background in a fair amount of detail to coworkers/employees is par for the course. But while I understand having a background check run by the company during the hiring process, I'd like to keep my personal background personal. And while I'm not wild about discussing this embarrassing incident, my reaction was more of a how and why did you obtain this information, than a deep, dark secret that I'm worried might come to light. How do I let go of my weirded out feeling, and how do I best address this in a follow-up conversation? Update October 24, 2024. Imagine my surprise when I opened the blog today to find you had re-released my letter. I felt an update was owed to the commentariat. I can't tell you how much I appreciated your advice on this peculiar situation. It was a much-needed grounding and reminder of what normal should look like. While I was not able to participate when the post was originally published, I did read every single comment. Your point about questionable judgment was spot on. Scott was indeed a younger employee and deeply convinced of the superiority of his own intellect and gender. He had a 5-, 10-, and 15-year life plan with ambitious goals. Unfortunately, this was coupled with no more sense than God gave a goose. His previous work experience in an unrelated field left him the impression that it was absolutely reasonable to deeply examine the people around him but then verify his findings through research. As part of his 5-year plan, he was applying for many roles within the company in search of advancement, despite not having relevant experience nor demonstrating development in any key skill areas. As mentioned in my letter, I was hired on in a line-level position and then promoted to a management position within a couple of months. In that industry, career advancement is often tied to reassignment in diverse geographic locations, going where the work is, and arriving at a new location is, accompanied by sharing bona fides with the team to build connections. Imagine you've worked for 20 years for the same company, but have moved 8 times and never worked in the same place / with the same team more than 2 years in a row. I had spent a great deal of time grabbing opportunities as they arose, living out of suitcases, and working far, far too much. I had garnered some nice accolades in some faintly glamorous locales, but anyone who has done it knows that the luster is surface level only. Scott was intensely interested in my career experience and how I progressed in the field. Coupled with his desire for promotion and deeply flawed perceptions around reasonable follow-up, this led to the rather extraordinary situation I wrote in about. Armed with the knowledge that Scott was about as intuitive as a pile of bricks, I was planning a follow-up conversation the next time we worked together. He beat me to the punch when he asked me again about the information he had found as soon as I approached his desk. This time with a copy of my booking photo pulled up on his screen. I reacted much more decisively this time, telling him to close the browsing window immediately and pulling him into the office for a one-on-one conversation. Looking back, I think I used your phrasing almost verbatim around work boundaries and everyone deserving privacy. Scott was mostly confused by this response. In his view, it was perfectly reasonable to look for deeper information about almost anyone. His rationale behind asking me about what he'd found was he wanted to alert me this information was out there. I told him it was unacceptable behavior and demonstrated incredibly poor judgment that he'd dig this far into any colleague, much less his manager. Then to bring it up multiple times. The company completed background checks for every employee. If they had proceeded with the hire, one would assume that nothing relevant was in the report. I also let him know this was such an egregious situation, we would be documenting both conversations and issuing a write-up, and this endangered his future with the company. After distance from the situation, I genuinely believe Scott was an incredibly intelligent person demonstrating that anyone can be an absolute idiot. Did I document the situation in detail? Absolutely. Did I discuss this with HR and my boss? Absolutely, and she was ready to fire Scott. HR was flabbergasted and incredibly helpful in their handling of the situation. My documentation plan was supported with the agreement that Scott was on his final chance. Did Scott get promoted into another position? Not while I was there. After this incident, he did demonstrate an earnest desire to improve as a team member and make amends. We parted on decent terms. I actually wound up suggesting he read AAM regularly. Unfortunately, my industry was one devastated by the pandemic. I wrote the letter in mid-2019. By March of 2020, almost my entire professional network was either unemployed or being overworked as skeleton staff. Driven by necessity, I grabbed a copy of Allison's book How to Get a Job and, after giving some serious consideration about what I'd like out of my work moving forward, I retooled my resume and got to hunting. I've successfully transitioned to a new, very different industry and landed a position with a great company. It offers a much better work-life balance and more reasonable employee culture. While I do sometimes miss my old career, my situation is much improved and I have been quite happy to be settled down. I have no idea where Scott has landed, but I wish him well. I will not be Googling him. Stories number 31. Am I the asshole? If I tell my tenants they can't have packages delivered to the house. I have a rental unit in my home, a daylight basement with a separate entrance. I share my mailbox with my tenants, and until recently, I never had issues with mail or deliveries. About 7 months ago, I rented to a couple in their mid-40s. She's a substitute teacher out all day, and he's retired and home during the day. Generally, they're great tenants, rent is always on time, and they're easy to live with. However, she's a shopaholic, constantly ordering packages. I don't mind occasional deliveries, but the sheer volume has become overwhelming. I frequently order from Amazon and other sites. I have deliveries sent to my garage and notifications set up. I also work from home so I can retrieve packages quickly if drivers miss instructions. So far, no issues and I've never had any porch pirates. When the tenants moved in, they went on an extended overseas vacation, saying they'd have a few packages shipped back. I agreed, but soon became inundated with over 20 large boxes, some weighing 30 to 40 pounds. I schlepped them to my garage until they returned. I brushed it off, thinking it was a one-time thing. Then they went on a 2-week cruise, and more packages arrived. Since then, deliveries haven't slowed down. I asked them to set up delivery instructions to the garage and notifications, the same as I did. I made it clear that I don't want my porch to become a target for thieves, especially since my house faces the main road. Despite this, packages were still left on my porch. Again, I spoke to her, and suggested she rent a mailbox at a nearby postal store, but she said it was too expensive and inconvenient with her schedule. Amazon lockers don't work since she orders from other sites. She did agree to have packages sent to her sisters during vacations, but this doesn't address the daily issue. Packages keep coming to my porch, so I must move them to the garage and text them each time, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. It's become a huge pitta, as I have a ruptured disc in my back, which she is aware. I've nearly tripped over boxes just opening the door to leave the house. 2 weeks ago, there were 2 huge boxes taking up my whole porch. I swear, I've had to fight the urge to not punt the damn things off the porch, and I don't want to bust my foot, lol. I'm usually easygoing, but I'm fed up with being the middleman for her shopping sprees, as she jokes, and I feel it is very inconsiderate. I don't want to seem like a nitpicky, tch, especially since I already had to address parking issues when they first moved in. I made it clear when I interviewed them that we'd need to respect each other's space due to our unique shared living circumstances, yet they seem oblivious. They're on a month-to-month lease, and I'm considering raising the rent for the extra hassle or banning deliveries entirely. Am I the asshole? Or is my tenant being inconsiderate and rude? Stories number 32. My 38/F ex-fiancé ghosted me, 39/M, before our wedding. It's been 16 years and now she wants to talk it over again. Should we reopen closed wounds? I was never given an explanation. She just left and told nobody. It was literally right before our big wedding ceremony. She didn't leave a note, nothing, just left. Even her family were left baffled. She just up and left. We had dated all through HS and all through college. She eventually returned, but not to me. I had to learn via third party, her parents. She had no intentions of coming home. She wanted nothing to do with me and told her parents to avoid having me around. I never got a choice in the matter. I respected her wishes. I never understood why she did it. My only guess was she had a mental breakdown because she cut off all contact with everyone. We were both young and still growing. I don't know, but I've struggled with it since. Out of the blue she DMs me on Facebook after all these years and wants to meet up. I'm an influx of emotions right now. Angry, nervous, hopeful, sad. I still have feelings for her. I don't know if I could take her back. But, looking at her Facebook makes me miss her. She's even better looking than she was before and single. I'm conflicted. She won't talk about anything as to why she left. She said it's best to do so in person. The only thing I can tell is from her Facebook is a bunch of stuff about her being weak and living a life full of shame and regret and being lonely. This is dumb. She ghosted me and I should want nothing to do with her, but, damn it, I still have feelings for her. I never stop thinking about her. What should I do? Ghost her in return? Call her out? See where this date takes us. TLDR ex-fiancé met me on Facebook wanting to meet up for a date. I haven't spoken to her in 15 years. Update. Well, that was something. I got closure at least. We met at a cafe and sat and talked outside. The first thing I noticed was how badly scarred her arms were and how much pain was in her face. Long story short, she wanted to break up long before the wedding. She was too weak and cowardly to speak up for herself. She had a complete nervous breakdown over everything. She had been tired of being forced into doing things she never wanted to do and never having the guts to stand up for herself. She was mad at her family pressuring her to get married and pump out kids. She was mad at them forcing her into a degree that she didn't want. She was mad herself for not being able to speak up. Nothing she did was justified, which we agreed on. When I first proposed to her, I did it in a public area. I had put her on the spot and she wanted to say no, but she couldn't bear to see me hurt. She was right. I made all the choices for her. I was a very different person back then, and she was very meek, as in she just went with the flow and had no backbone. I drowned her voice out often and often never gave her the chance to grow to be a person. Back then I was often focused only on myself. Well, everything came to a climax and she had a complete mental breakdown. She ran away from her problems at the behest of her best friend and only person in the world she ever trusted. As she said, it's the only thing she knows how to do, run. She never had the spine to speak up. Her life just spiraled downwards. She did a few years homeless after her best friend's husband kicked her to the curb. The rest of that time was spent in prison, which she didn't specify what she did. She was released about a year ago and has been turning her life around. She has a job, she's reconnected with her parents, and she's finally reconnecting with me. She never stopped trying to get in touch with me. As for our future, we have none. We both agreed to end things and go our separate ways. We both are changed, two different people. We have nothing in common and don't live near each other. She doesn't justify what she did, nor does she want to be forgiven. She thinks it's repulsive and is ashamed of her actions. I wanted to be angry, but I couldn't. I just forgave her. With that we shook hands, said our goodbyes, and that will likely be the last time we ever see one another. It's bittersweet. I got the closure I wanted. We both did. It feels like a burden was released. I know now we never had a future together and never will. But, on the other I'm sad because it's over. All these years maybe hoping something would happen were for naught. But, in the end this is an ending and I finally have closure. Not many get to say that. Do I believe her story? Yes, I do, and even if she's full of shit at this point, does it even matter? I've always known her to be very weak-willed, meek. She often just does what everyone tells her to do and often runs when things get too difficult. She avoids her problems because was too weak to stand up to them. I mean, it makes sense why her family would not talk to me about her. They were the typical tiger parents that disowned their problem child. TLDR, all's well that ends well. Our relation has finally come to an end and we can move on. Stories number 33. The shark landlord got more than he bargained for. Years ago, I moved into a new apartment while studying abroad. The landlord was, well, let's just say he was a real shark. The guy had a dozen properties rented out to students and a reputation for squeezing every last penny out of his tenants. By coincidence I ended up dating a fellow student who happened to rent from him in the next building over, and who moved out 6 months in. So I had advance warning of what to expect on move-out day. When she moved out, she had broken a single plate and lost a fork, so somehow got charged for an entire new matching set of plates and cutlery. She even replaced the plate and fork herself, but that wasn't good enough for Mr. Shark Lord. No, he insisted on billing her for a full, brand new set. Of course, she learned later from her ex-flat mate that he only replaced the missing items and pocketed the difference. Imagine the profit accumulating over the years over a dozen apartments, when for every student you charge the price of a new set, but actually only buy one replacement set for one fork here, one glass there, pocketing the difference. Not just shady, but utterly petty. Now, when myself and my best friend had moved in, landlord proudly tells us about the brand new mattresses in our rooms. A year later, when my friend was moving out, we did a massive deep clean, left the place sparkling, and made sure to replace anything missing. But of course, during the inspection, the landlord found issues. Surprise, surprise, he deducted and withheld my friend's entire deposit, mostly on the basis of the mattress being slightly stained and needing replacement. My friend was understandably fuming. But then we had a thought. If he was charging us for a new mattress, then my friend had technically just paid for this one, so, technically, it was his. And, equally technically, it just wouldn't be considerate to leave personal belongings cluttering up the landlord's apartment after he moved out, would it? Moving out means moving out. He couldn't take the mattress on the plane, obviously, so we hauled it down to a nearby park, where some local homeless people hung out, and donated it. Fast forward a few days, I'm still in the apartment and about to move out shortly, my friend's already gone, and I hear the landlord arrive to show the room to a new tenant. I hear the bedroom door and then rage. Where the fuck is the mattress? I have to fucking buy a new one. I almost lost it right there. But I held my composure, played dumb, and listening to him fume. And a few days later, when it was my turn to leave. Oh, I knew I was getting nothing back from my deposit. And I too was going to take all of my personal belongings with me. So I took everything I had paid for, the mattress, plates, cutlery, glasses, even the light bulbs. The friendly neighborhood hobos made out like kings. Stories number 34. My daughter experienced an odd allergic reaction after we went on vacation. My daughter, Sienna, dropped her bags in the foyer and started walking towards the stairs. I'm going to take a shower, she declared. Take your bags upstairs with you, I pointed. Ugh, she sighed in frustration as she stomped back over to retrieve her bags. And don't use all the hot water, I added when she was halfway up the stairs, I want to take a shower too. The two of us had just returned home after spending the weekend in Florida. It was a fun trip, but it was exhausting. To help myself relax, I went into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine, and downed it in one gulp before heading up to my room to watch a little TV. I was halfway up the stairs when I heard Sienna call out. She yelled. I could tell from her tone of voice that something was wrong. I ran the rest of the way up the stairs and over to the bathroom door. Sienna, I knocked on the door, what's the matter? There's something wrong with my skin, she sobbed. I tried the doorknob, thankful to find that it wasn't locked. Once I was in the bathroom, I rushed over to the shower and pulled the curtain aside. Oh my God! I gasped when I saw the way her skin was sloughing off her body, leaving her muscles and tendons exposed. What's happening to me? I think you're having an allergic reaction, I said. A what? She couldn't hear me clearly because of the loose skin that was covering her ears. An allergic reaction, I repeated, your body is rejecting the new skin. By the time I was done talking, the skin she had been wearing was lying in the bottom of the tub. Upset, Sienna dropped to her knees and started bawling. I really liked that skin, she said between sobs. I know you did, honey, I tried to soothe her. What am I going to do now, she asked. I can't go outside looking like this, she gestured at herself. Don't worry, I replied, I have a spare skin in my closet you can use until we can go back out and find you a new one. Stories number 35. Conversation overheard on a walk. Vest guy, so you want to be sure to do this at least once every couple weeks. Bike boy, that's a lot. Vest guy, trust me. It's better to do a little every so often than try and dig yourself out from under a pile after they've started to rot or freeze and they're shoulder height. Plus you don't want anyone to slip. If it happens on your property they can come after you. Bike boy, what do you do with them all? Vest guy, oh, that's a good question. You can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and get some big craft paper brown bags. They're water resistant. Pile them in there and set them on the curb and in this town they'll pick it up with the recycling. Bike boy, wouldn't it be easier to just burn them? Vest guy, listen, you can. You can. But it's dry as a bone this year and wildfires can start by just looking at the ground the wrong way. So I'd say you're better off just disposing of them. Even in humid conditions a controlled burn is easier said than done. Plus it won't win you any points with the neighbors. Bike boy, yeah, I guess you're right. Vest guy, your yard is like your soul. Maybe that's too extreme. But like, personally, I know if my yard's falling off, something's out of balance in my life. Like the yard is the first thing to go when I'm working too much or I'm preoccupied. You'll learn to enjoy it, I think. It's hard work but it's the good kind. Bike boy, I guess. Vest guy, I hope any of this is helpful. Bike boy, it is. For sure. I never had anyone to tell me this stuff. It's boring but like you said, it's the good kind of boring. Stories number 36. Entitled passenger raving. I used to think some entitled passenger stories were maybe a bit dramatized, but I witnessed my first full-on entitled passenger recently. I was on a domestic short-haul flight. It's only about 90 minutes. There are 2 rows in the middle with extra leg room because they are the emergency exit rows and these seats have a surcharge because of it. The flight itself was about £180, and the surcharge for the legroom seats was an extra £49.99. I booked the standard row just behind, and the legroom seats were occupied by 3 middle-aged women about my age. This was 7:30 a.m., and they were whooping and screeching like drunks on a hen night. Then a couple of men turned up, looked a bit puzzled, and then very politely said they thought the ladies were in the wrong seats. Oh no, they screeched, it's the first day of our holiday and we just wanted to enjoy ourselves. Yes, but you're in our seats, so please can you move? It turned out that only the one in the middle seat had booked the legroom seat, and her friends had taken the other 2 instead of their cheaper ones. Middle seat screecher tried. I'd be lonely without my friends here, we want to sit together and it's only a short flight. You'll be fine in our seats. Instead neither man backed down, and eventually the steward intervened and made the 2 friends move to their correct seats. So then the safety announcement came on, and on inspection, the middle seat screecher was told all her bags had to go into the overhead locker. It was a condition of sitting in the emergency exit row. She then started bitching about that. That's an expensive bag, someone will try and steal it, I need it here, I have things I might need during the flight. Senior attendant then came and told her very firmly that she either stowed her bag, or she had to move to a standard seat, and as the plane was full, that meant disembarkation. So she finally stowed it. Then the refreshments came round, and she asked for a gin and tonic. This was 8 a.m. but it's my holiday, I deserve a drink, sorry. It was a condition of sitting in the emergency exit row that you couldn't drink alcohol in case it impaired you when opening the emergency door. That's effing stupid. We're not going to crash, it's just one drink, this guy can open the door if he needs to. Senior attendant came back and gave her a talking to along the lines that if she continued to disrupt the flight then they would put her on a banned passenger list and she wouldn't be allowed to book with the company again. She spent the rest of the journey grumbling about how her holiday had been ruined, and trekking up and down the aisle to go screech with her friends further back. Honestly, if I hadn't seen it I wouldn't have believed it. How do these people not feel embarrassed about making themselves look a total fool in public? Or think they are entitled to take someone's seat, knowing that it cost a lot more than they'd paid? Stories number 37. I, 31F, think my boyfriend, 32M, has never really forgiven me for my cheating years ago. What can I do? About 3 years ago, I, 31F, cheated on my boyfriend, 32M. For anonymity, I'll call him James. The guy I cheated with, John, wanted me to break up with James, but the affair was entirely based on lust. Looking back, I think it was also because I was incredibly insecure, and John's intense pursuit of me provided the attention I needed at the time to feel better about myself. When I rejected him and told him we should stop seeing each other, he threatened to out me to my boyfriend. So, I confessed to James in case John made good on his threat. As far as I know, John never actually contacted James, and the day I rejected him was the last time I ever saw or spoke to him. I've also blocked his number. James and I had already been together for a year, and although you may not believe me, I really was deeply in love with him. At first, he decided to break up with me, but we stayed friends, and after about 3 months, we realized we missed each other and got back together. Since then, I've been in therapy to deal with the inner demons that led me to cheat on James in the first place. Our relationship has been wonderful since then, and I think we've both worked hard to become better partners for each other, and we even moved in together 4 months ago. However, last week, James hosted his best friend Luke at our home. I was working on my laptop at the time, but I could hear them chatting in the living room. I admit I eavesdropped and heard that Luke was confiding in James about his boyfriend cheating on him. What really surprised me was that James advised Luke not to take back his boyfriend because it wouldn't be worth it, and that cheating damages a relationship permanently. It's never the same. James also told Luke that, because of his experience, he no longer believes in the romantic idea of the one. I stayed silent, and when I left the study later that evening, I never brought it up, basically pretending I hadn't heard anything. I want to confront James about what he said, but I really don't know how, or if I even should. Does this mean he's never forgiven me? Why did he take me back, and why is he still with me if he doesn't think it's worthwhile? Stories number 38. I'm angry and devastated. I voted this week and have been reminding everyone in my circle to vote. My boyfriend is very forgetful about a lot of things, so naturally I reminded him as well, but I was met with instant hostility. I was quite taken aback. I had asked if he received his ballot yet and he said yes. I then said, well, you are voting right. Make sure you get it filled out and turned in. In response, he went off on me and basically said that it was a private matter. I was being pushy and it was none of my business. I explained that it's just especially important this election cycle to vote, and so I wanted to remind him. For context, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, I had an absolute emotional breakdown and told him how horrible this was and how scared I was for myself, other women and little girls. Before I opened up to him, I don't think he had fully grasped the gravity of the situation, but when I explained the political reality of everything and my terror/heartbreak about it, he was very supportive. Fast forward to this week and I thought he was on the same page with me about what is at stake this election and how vital it is to vote. I've been talking about it for months. And then he just snapped at me when pressed about making sure he votes. So, I backed off, but I had such a weird feeling about his reaction that I decided to look up if he received his ballot, how it is in other states. But in mine you can look up and see if yourself or someone else received and/or submitted a ballot. To be clear, you cannot see how anyone votes. It showed that he hasn't updated his voter registration since his last place of residence and so did not receive a ballot this year or the previous 2 election cycles, which means he lied to me. He is not voting this year and never had any intention to. I'm really fucking hurt and devastated. I understand that it's his vote and he does have the right to not vote, but this election is different. We don't live in normal times where you can just sit this one out. It feels like he doesn't actually give a fuck about my human rights, and I thought he did. 10 years in a relationship with this person and I truly believed he would show up for me and the other women in his life. Now I feel like a sobbing idiot. I don't know what to do from here because this feels like something I'm not sure I can't get past. Stories number 39. My best friend moved in with me because he was going to be homeless. The deal is that it was temporary. Now whenever I ask him about moving out he calls me transphobic. My best friend, transman 29, just got out of a really stressful relationship in June 2024. He had a little debt from the apartment he shared with that person and lived there until he moved in with me in the beginning of September. The deal was me, F29, and my boyfriend, M29, would offer the spare room for him to get on his feet and instead of rent, because we made clear we want him to move out, so no rent, so he could save, he would clean. Since, he has created conflict, rarely cleaned, and hasn't done simple things we ask, like instead of parking behind us, parking on the street. We live in a neighborhood that's quiet and that's never an issue. He even created a temporary change of address to our home without asking/telling/informing us. We found out because we saw the outside of the envelope when getting the mail. When we confronted him, he called me transphobic, that I don't understand what it's like to be trans and homeless. He's right, I don't. I thought it wasn't about that, but the trust and deal we had had. He's had months to move and me and my partner don't know how to tell him he needs to go by date XYZ without getting yelled at that we are transphobic. Am I the asshole? Advice? I don't know. Stories number 40. My boss complained about my cutting skills, so I gave him a surprise. So, I have this boss who's a total control freak about perfection. We were recently assigned to make name tags for an upcoming event, and I did my best to cut them out nicely. However, I'm not a machine, and some of my cuts ended up a little wonky. It wasn't intentional, I just thought it added a bit of character. But apparently, my boss had a different opinion. They flipped out about how not straight the lines were and went on a rant about how everything in the office needs to be perfectly aligned. I get it, professionalism matters. But come on, they really acted like I had committed a crime against stationery. So, I decided to have a little fun with it. For the next batch of name tags, I went full chaos mode. I cut off the corners and left some jagged edges, definitely not straight. I made sure they were all different sizes and shapes, just to really drive the point home. When I presented these new name tags, my boss's reaction was priceless. Now, every time I see them struggling to come to terms with those name tags, I can't help but feel a bit of satisfaction. Sometimes, it feels good to embrace a little imperfection, even if it wasn't my original intention. Stories number 41. My coworker is obsessed with taking credit for my work, so I started giving her exactly what she wanted. There's this coworker in my office, let's call her Megan, who's built her whole career on taking credit for other people's work. She's the type who, if you so much as come up with a good idea in a team meeting, will start repeating it loudly and then take it to the boss as her concept. For months, she's been getting away with this, and since I'm not exactly confrontational, I figured I'd just keep my head down and let it go. But it was getting out of control. Megan had gone from stealing ideas to outright taking my actual work and passing it off as her own. I'd create presentations, reports, and proposals, and somehow she'd end up presenting them to management with barely a word of credit thrown my way. My frustration hit a breaking point after our last project. I'd spent days on an analysis report, only to have her march into the boardroom and summarize it, taking full credit. And the worst part? Management actually believed her. So, I decided to take a different approach. If she wanted to steal my work, I'd make sure it was work worth stealing. Here's what I did. I created an elaborate, jargon-filled, 25-slide presentation about a fake process I called Optimal Revenue Integration Strategy, or ORIS for short. It looked impressive, sounded professional, and was absolutely meaningless. Just buzzwords strung together. I intentionally left the presentation open on my desktop during lunch, fully expecting her to see it. Sure enough, Megan swooped in, borrowed it, and set up a meeting with our boss to showcase her latest insights. When the meeting happened, I sat quietly in the back, watching as she went through slide after slide, using words like synergize and monetize like her life depended on it. The boss's face went from interested, to confused, to downright skeptical. Finally, he asked, "Can you explain what optimal revenue integration strategy means in practice?" Megan's face went pale as she stumbled over the buzzwords, trying to make sense of it. But it was nonsense. She couldn't explain it because it wasn't real. The boss turned to me, knowing I'd been working on the project too, and I just shrugged, saying I had no idea what she was trying to convey. Megan was caught. The meeting ended abruptly, and she hasn't been able to steal my work since. I'm now known as the guy who actually understands the strategy in the office, and she's been side-eyed by everyone ever since. Stories number 42. Am I the asshole? For refusing to babysit the golden child's baby after he disowned me for being adopted? I, 20, femme, was adopted when I was 16 by my half-brother and his wife who were in their late 30s at the time. They already had 6 children when they adopted me, but it was never an issue. They have treated me like their own kid since they met me and later adopted me, so did all their other kids. Except for one, their golden child who is only 4 months older than me. We will call him Chad. Chad has always been an insensitive asshole to literally everyone, including our other siblings. He would literally fist fight our older sister, say horrible and mean things to everyone and get away with it. He also had extreme anger issues that would case broken doors, holes in walls, etc. He also got to do everything me and my sister were never able to do, got a free car, go out at night, etc. When we were still in school together during high school, he got up in front of our whole class year and told everyone I wasn't his sister and never would be. He then told me in front of his friends that I would never be a part of his family and I should just get over it and walked off. This was not a one-and-done thing, he would keep doing this up until he moved out and I stopped seeing/talking to him. Golden Boy once again got the limelight of the family after he got married right after high school, moved out to his wife's family's house, and then had a baby, the first grand baby. Since this has happened, I have stayed as far away from him as possible, only seeing him for family pictures every year because our mother asks. Recently I decided to come forward to our mom about what he said and did, because she was upset about how I was distancing myself from him. She basically pulled the "that's still my kid and it's my first grand baby" card as the reason she wasn't going to be upset over it. I didn't really care, to be honest. I knew it wasn't going to change her mind on her kid anyway. Out of nowhere, I got a message begging me to come to babysit for them because "you're the only one who can deal with these kinds of babies because no one will help." Apparently they are weaning their kid off of breastfeeding and the baby is extremely clingy because of that. And the fact that the mom is a germ phobia who has basically isolated this kid since birth, it literal has only been held by like 6 people since it's been born. They know I don't sleep for the most part because I'm an insomniac with ADHD, and I also am not bothered by crying. For some reason, I can sit for hours with the baby crying and it doesn't bother me. Can't tell if that's a blessing or a curse at this point. My sister is mad at me because apparently, they haven't asked anyone else in the family for help but me, and everyone wants to go see this baby. Am I the asshole for not wanting to be around or take care of the baby because its father said that I'm not a part of his family? Update, Chad had burned the bridge for the last time. I want to say this, I read everyone's comments and it made me feel much better knowing my feelings on this whole situation are valid. I wanted to give an update, that most of you may not like. After I posted I ended up talking to two of my friends from high school, they were actually there during multiple occasions when Chad Public said all that stuff. I talked with them for a little while. One of these friends actually came over almost weekly when I was still living at my parents' home so she firsthand understands my family. We talked and we all mutually agreed, I go this once, see if we can't mend things. If not I can tell my mom and sister I tried and we are done with the whole thing and if the whole negative thing with my family keeps up, I will cut them off for good. So I accepted to go babysit. I went over to Chad's house around 8 p.m. As soon as I showed up I was greeted by Chad's wife who was extremely happy to see me. She was tired, you could just tell she had the, I have a 1-year-old, face going on. She talked to me for a few minutes about how happy she was I came over and how she was glad to be going out with Chad. I kinda just listened to her go on and on before she finally got to the baby. Let's call him Seth. She explained to me his night route, feedings, etc. Nothing too big. Then she got to the end where she started going on about how he was having crying fits at night and how he wouldn't get to sleep until mid-morning. I was a little on that, but all babies have different routes I guess. She then said they would only be gone about 4 hours and that they would be home around like 12:31 at most. After this Chad shows up from their room, literally starts talking to his wife, looks at me and then just looks me over for a minute and gives me a small wave and nod before heading out of the house. His wife follows and simply tells me to call or text if I need anything. For a minute I was just stunned but went to work to see Seth. Which was odd, because it was my first time seeing him in person and not in the photos that are hung around our partner's house. In person he is the cutest little baby ever. He was fine the whole time, and he only cried because there was no one in the room not because of the weaning. By this time it was around 11:30 almost 12. I would check the clock every few minutes just to see what time it was. 12:30 rolled around and I'm like, should I text them? And I'm like no let me give them another few minutes until I need to text them. I ended up texting both of them at one asking where they were because they did say they would be home by now. I got no reply from either of them. They finally show up at 3 in the morning. I'm livid at this point. Not even over having to take care of Seth for a longer period of time, but just because they never texted me back. Like what if there was emergency or something? They walk into the living room and I'm just like, I texted asking where y'all were and no one answered, and Chad's wife starts saying that, oh Chad said it was fine and that it would only be an hour more dash, and I was just like, you know what it's fine, whatever, Seth is sleeping. She looks at me all weird and I rolled my eyes say, it's not the weaning that's making him cry at night. He gets lonely, he's clingy. Just let him know you are in the room when he starts crying and he will go right back to sleep. I started to walk out with my stuff, as I was right about to walk completely past Chad when I turned around and was like, so you aren't going to say anything to me? After I looked after your kid for like 7 hours now, he snorted at me and was like, no. My wife is the one who talked me into this anyway. Pissed off at this point I said, so this wasn't I don't know, possibly a way to be able to apologize for high school or maybe all those other times you decide to outcast me from the family? Because I was under the impression that maybe you want to patch things up because of you asking me of all people to watch your kid. He sat there for a minute and just said, why should I apologize? Because literally nothing from high school has changed. Man, you really do need to just grow up and understand that me and my wife and aren't going to cater to you like mom and dad did because you're adopted. You aren't our family and you won't ever be. At this point I just got in my car and left. I ended up texting my mom about all of it thinking she would get it in the morning when she woke up. No, of course she had to be awake. She apparently told Chad's wife about the conversation we had about all the stuff Chad had said and done to me in school. Apparently his wife felt bad because she had an adopted sister too and felt horrible that Chad had done and said all those things. Apparently mom didn't know about Chad asking about the babysitting thing until now and she started talking to the wife who is now upset. Apparently she thought Chad would have changed since then and didn't think he will act the way he did when I left. I told my mom that I'm done with him, and that if something ever happened with Seth then I would be there, but I was done with them until that happens. Way things are going, I will most likely be cutting my whole family off, because this isn't worth the stress anymore. Update, mother is now ruining my time with the news of my other brother getting married, May 26, 2022. So it has been a hot minute since I last updated on the whole Chad situation. It's mainly due to the surprising fact that my family, my mother and sister, not bugging me as much lately. The first day or two after the interaction with Chad was a bit hectic. Both of them were blowing up my phone, trying to get me to talk to them. Mostly my mom just making excuses for Chad, my sister trying to basically just tell me to get over it. I ended up telling the both of them, in text and over the phone, that I was over it, and I would be cutting myself off completely from Chad and his little family. This sparked some anger, but my mother soon went quiet and later my sister. Everything seemed to be going pretty good after that for a while. That was until a week later when my sister showed up unannounced at my apartment demanding that I take the blessing of getting to be around Chad's sheltered child when no one else seemed to be able to. Basically acting like it was some huge honor that I was asked to babysit. I almost snapped. I wanted to call her a bitch and to get off my property and not come back because I was just so sick of it. But I didn't. From my doorstep I told her that if she wanted to see the baby so bad just go over and see it. It wasn't my issue to deal with, and I slammed the door in her face and watched her leave. It's been radio silent for a while now until earlier this week. I was scrolling on Instagram when I noticed that my oldest brother, the one that I get along super well and supported me about curing Chad off, his girlfriend of 4 years the same age as me, are now engaged and posted pictures of the proposal. I noticed the post had been made last week, but no one had told me. Not even my mother. I texted my brother's girlfriend asking her about literally everything that was happening. She was surprised because my mother had said she had told everyone in the family about the wedding. She then told me that they would be holding a family meeting at my parents' house to talk about the wedding plans. I said okay. The meeting was for today around dinner time. I showed up and walked into the house and noticed that a lot of stuff was different decoration-wise. My parents had our family photos all arranged around the living room, and a few random frames with multiple small photos in them as well. I noticed that they had replaced multiple small photos of specifically me from the frames, and replaced them with now pictures of Chad and his wife and my older brother and his girlfriend. What were maybe 6 pictures of me on any of the walls, there were now 2, a baby picture of me and my senior high school photo, that are now in the hallway, not even the living room. I ignored it and didn't say anything. After a while everyone showed up, except for, of course, Chad, who my mom pulled he wanted to spend time with his baby, BS. They all started talking about the people plans of the part, aka people who were going to be key parts of the wedding cast. I tried my best to listen and take in all of what my brother's girlfriend was saying. I noticed by the end of it all, my name was literally never added into any of the main plans. I wasn't mentioned at all for another in the plans. I stated to question why I was there if I wasn't going to be in the main plans of the wedding. I was kinda like, why not just send me an invitation then? I went home and texted his girlfriend asking about what had happened at the little meeting. Apparently my mother had told her that I wouldn't want to be involved in any of the wedding stuff and that it wasn't my thing. She called me unfeminine, that I wouldn't like doing any kind of bridal stuff because I'm not girly. She then said everything was set in stone now. My older sister is going to be a bridesmaid and my little sister is to be a flower girl. My little brother will be the ring holder, my other little brother Chad will be groomsman. And apparently my mother also told her that because of what happened with Chad that I shouldn't be sat at the family table but at a guest table. I will just be another guest at the wedding. I didn't really say anything back because it hurt. It hurt that my mother would say that about me, that I was infeminine and that just because I myself didn't do a lot of girly things in my spare time, I wasn't going to be able or enjoy doing something like a wedding or be a bridesmaid. I can't believe she would say that about me. To be honest, I don't know if I'm even going to go. The wedding is scheduled for the end of the year. It sounds stupid and petty, but this hurt me. It hurt that I'm being outcast, most likely due to Chad once again. And as I am typing this, my sister is texting me about how she is helping plan all the bride stuff. Honestly, I'm going to leave it off at this for right now because I don't know how to even feel, if you know what I mean right now. In the next day or so I might update when I feel up to it. Another update, Chad's wife is pregnant again. I don't even know what to say. I didn't expect to update again so soon, but I just got the news from my older brother's fiancée. Chad's wife is pregnant again. Update, slowly trying, but not going great. It's been a minute since I updated. I would say it's because everything is going great, but I would be slightly lying. Things have only mildly gotten better for me since the last update. I have moved even farther away from my parents since the last few updates, in part to hopefully try and start a process of trying to cut them off from my life. This has worked a bit, but not enough to actually make me feel any better. They, mostly my mother, have still decided to take time to bother me showing up at my new place and only giving me a second of a heads up. There is no update concerning the wedding. I have only gotten an invitation though the mail. I'm not going to try press it anymore. I'm going to go, but I will most likely leave after the ceremony, not stay to hang out with anyone. Chad's situation has grown only by the fact that over a group chat they decided not to have any kind of gender reveal or even a baby shower. They just announced that they are now having a girl. Don't want to be an ass, but Chad's wife stretched the fact that Chad randomly made her get up and go get a ultrasound to find out the gender. She acted like she really didn't want to do it. Apparently they went to one of those fancy ultrasound places where you get fancy models of the fetus high-tech ultrasound pics. Chad also announced that he is going to college now, and asked for a $1,000 loan, which they gave to him. They have always stretched that they will never loan money to any of their kids. My stomach turned when they happily gave him the money, but they wouldn't lend me $20 for school books when I went to college. They refused to help me get into college. I muted the group chat. I also found out that my sister has possibly outed me to mom. I came out when I was in high school as being bisexual with a preference for women. This didn't go well, to be quite honest, as my mom pulled. I have a lesbian cousin who is married to a woman, followed up by a homophobic story about how her friend traumatized her in college by taking her to a gay bar and she got hit on by another female. Not great. My brother fully believes that my love for women is trauma-based because of the abuse I faced from our bio father. My heart was broken when all of this came to the surface, knowing they both truly wouldn't support me. They would only lie to my face about being uncomfortable by my life. I basically promised myself that I would never tell them if I got a female partner, in hopes of saving not only my feelings but my partner's feelings in the long run. It makes me extremely uncomfortable to think about them looking me in the eyes and believing everything that they told me concerning their feelings about my lifestyle. I fear my sister has told our mom about me dating a female now that I have moved further away from them, something that I never did while in the house living with them. I noticed on my girlfriend Instagram my sister had like one of the pictures of me and my girlfriend. My girlfriend, after hearing all of this, supports me about not posting pictures of us, seeing as she knows that my family follows me on Instagram. My girlfriend has not tagged me in any pictures on Instagram, so my sister had been looking through my friend on Instagram. Not even a week after the photo was liked, I had to see my sister in person for something. She started to make awkward comments about my dating life and if I was seeing anyone, which I only said maybe and left it at that. 2 days later my mom is showing up at my front door with some store-bought cookies, asking me if there's anything I want to tell her. I brushed her off and didn't say anything. She then left and hasn't said anything else to me. A few hours later my little brother texts me asking if I had told mom about me dating, because she is apparently going crazy, and about how his dad is just telling her that it's just a trauma response. I haven't told anyone about me dating, so clearly someone told her about me dating, especially the fact that they are bringing up that I'm dating a female. I honestly don't know what I'm supposed to do at this point, as I am trying my best to cut them off. My girlfriend is telling me not to think about it too much and that we can get through it together. I honestly don't know where I would be without her at this point, because she is the only one keeping me sane throughout this entire transition. This update isn't anything grand, but it is something. I wish I could fully say that my life is getting better, but it's really only getting better at a snail's pace. At the moment all I can say is thank you to everyone who has been supporting me throughout all of these updates. Everyone's input has actually made me see how messed up and how wrong my family has been treating me, and how I shouldn't be letting them continue to lead my life and invalidate my feelings. I hope to update after the wedding in a few months. Stories number 43. My husband wants a one-night stand. I am 27F, been with my husband 29M for 7 years now. We have a daughter and I do love him more than anything. Long story short, when my husband was 17 he had sex with his boss at work, who was a married woman in her late 40s. She seduced him and took advantage of his horniness and lack of maturity. He soon realized this and quit his job and went straight to therapy. He was honest to me about all this when we met. I caught him once watching MILF porn, but that was years ago, and he really apologized and promised not to do it. He asks me sometimes to role play that I am a 40s woman and makes me ask him to do things for me. Lately he has been not acting like himself, and he told me he went back to therapy but did not tell me why. He barely initiates sex with me anymore. Just a few months ago we used to have sex nearly every day. A few days ago after dinner he sat me down and said he wanted to talk, and he really wants me to be understandable of what he is going to say. He told me more explicit details of what happened with that woman, and that he is still suffering from it till now, and that he just wants to have sex with someone like her just once more in his life, and that it's causing him anxiety and so much stress. I was shocked and did not know what to say. Our sex has always been great and I make sure he is happy with it. He told me he will not do anything behind my back and that he needs me to approve this or else he will not do it, but will still suffer, and for the first time ever, I can see tears in his eyes. I don't know what to do. We now sleep in separate rooms and I barely talk to him. I know he is in pain, but I do not think that doing this once again will help him heal, and I feel so fucking betrayed. I did read all the comments, which a lot of them were pretty harsh on him, to be honest. After he asked me that a week ago we barely talked, but yesterday he sat me down again and apologized about that. He said that he knew he hurt me and that it's not worth anything to be with someone else and ruin our family, and that he loves me and is really attracted to me, but those thoughts are just striking him short. Messages lately. He admitted that it was so dumb of him to even think about that and asked me for permission for it. I asked him if he has already done it or not and he denied and I believe him. I asked to see his phone, he gave it to me but said that I may find things I won't like. His search history had some MILF porn related stuff but it was every 2 weeks or more. He apologized about it and said that he is really working on that with his therapist. I suggested marriage counseling and he agreed. I can tell he is really suffering. I have been with him for more than 7 years now and I have never seen him like that before. Even when beloved ones passed away, he is so lost. The details of what happened with that woman is a bit harsh and he had already told me about everything when we first met, so it's not something new he made up. I talked to him about how that request made me feel and he listened and was apologetic about it. He showed me the meds his therapist put him on, which is something I did not know about. Throughout our relationship he never made me feel less of myself and is a great lover, husband and father. I am a woman so I will never be able to understand how he really feels about what happened to him in the past, but I'll be going to therapy sessions with him and try to help him. He was always there for me even when my own family didn't want me anymore. I do love him. Short messages and will try my best to help him. Stories number 44. For my 10th birthday, my dad surprised me with 2 real-life mermaids. I've always loved mermaids. Initially, Dad wasn't my favorite person. After he left Mom, he'd only send me mermaid figures. I ignored him until my 10th birthday, when he insisted on a birthday surprise. Dad lived by the sea, so I rode my bike to his beach house. Mom didn't like his new girlfriend. Apparently, Elle smelled like fish. I'm in the basement, Sadie. I was sure my mermaid obsession came from Dad. Dad, an architect, had designed his house like an aquarium, the walls like fish tanks, glass floors mimicking the deep ocean, filled with tiny flounders. I wasn't expecting much. The last time I was there, the basement was closed for renovations. This time, I stepped into dull blue light, like walking directly into the ocean itself. Dad stood in front of a tank, grinning beneath a banner saying, "Happy 10th birthday. Now, sweetie, this is between you and me, all right?" he whispered. I could barely register his words, my gaze glued to the glass. "I have friends with money," he said. "They do marine research, and they found them." Something warm expanded in my chest when a face appeared behind the glass, a beautiful girl with long blonde hair, and a blue tail, tiny points in her ears and strange rugged skin. Gills, I thought, dizzily. I jumped back, frightened, but exhilarated. She was so pretty, graceful, gently tapping on the glass. Behind her, a boy swam into view, dark brown hair billowing around him. The scar on his throat made me wonder if a fish had attacked him. He wasn't smiling, instead folding his arms, refusing to meet my gaze. I named them Fryron and Phelan, and I visited every weekend, talking to them through the glass. When Phelan started to talk back, though, I didn't like it. Phelan squeezed out, stabbing at his throat. He was always on the surface, leaning against the side, gasping for air, like he couldn't breathe. Mermaid speak was hard to understand. I giggled. "We can get you a bigger tank." He rolled his eyes, and Fryron nudged him. She pointed upwards. "You want me to open the tank?" I asked. Dad stopped me. "They're pretty, but dangerous, Sadie." Growing up, I lost interest. 14, searching for my cheer pom-poms, I rummaged through a box in the basement. Deep under holiday decorations, I found a yellow dress, sandals, and cargo shorts. The red smears staining the clothing sent me stumbling back, dropping the dress and baseball cap. There were college ID tags. Fryron and Phelan. Their real names were Quinn Cartwright and Matthew Whittam. An icy shiver slithered down my spine. When I twisted around, Fryron's face was pressed against the glass, her eyes wide. She pointed at her throat, choking on an explosion of bubbles. "Sadie!" Dad yelled from upstairs, followed by muffled screaming. The wet sound of a tail being violently dragged down the stairs. "We've caught another one." Stories number 45. You want the man of the house? Fine. This is one going back a few years, but it's one that made me chuckle when I remembered it. As we live in a busy estate, we are in a prime position for door-to-door callers. Usually they were fine, polite, and if I was happy to listen to their pitch then great, and if not, they were pretty good about hearing no and leaving me be. In our house, all the utility bills are in my name because I am the financial person in the household and by mutual agreement, the one who knows how many beans make 5 when it comes to deals and offers. Therefore, I decide our provider each year and negotiate the best offers. I know the exact date we come out if contract and am generally organized in swapping suppliers. Sometimes I do this with the D2D salesperson and other times online or via phone. It just so happened one year that we had a device-to-device salesperson knock in for a utility that was pretty close to its contract end date. He immediately started his pitch with "Good afternoon, is the man of the house there?" Now, straight away that rubbed me up the wrong way. I answered no and he proceeded to ask me when he would be home. I mentioned that he was at work but he was welcome to call back after 5 p.m. when the man of the house would be home. The salesperson wrote this down in his book, nodded at me and left. Sure enough, he called back after 5 p.m. and spoke to the very irritated man of the house, who asked the salesperson why he didn't speak to me about all this. The salesperson backpedaled so quickly and asked if I was there. Sadly, I was out and wouldn't be back until late, but he was welcome to call over again tomorrow and see if I would speak to him. As it so happens, I did speak to him the next morning. With a beaming smile and a smug of tea in my hand, I thanked him for reminding me to check my offers, and I half switched online to his company a couple of hours before he arrived. Then I waved him a cheery goodbye. I believe that would have cost him 2 sales, as I switched gas and electricity. Stories number 46. My 28F brother, 26M, stole the majority of my clothing and sold it to build his online thrift store business. How do I handle this? When I moved back to my dad's house after losing my house last spring, I brought the majority of my clothing with me and stored it in my room. I left everything in my room and packed one bag to travel across the country for a work opportunity in the summer. When I came home at the beginning of this year, my bedroom had clearly been picked through and my brother told me he cleaned it for me. When I asked where all of my clothes were, he told me he'd stored them in the attic, and I had no reason not to trust him, although I couldn't understand why he would do that. I had immediately launched into another job that dominated my time and knew a lot of my stuff was still in a storage unit, so I didn't really think about it. I told myself it was either in the attic or still in storage. I cleaned out my storage unit and realized that I had actually brought most of my wardrobe back. At the same time, my brother moved out. I asked him about the stuff in the attic over texting, and he told me he thought more stuff was in there than there was, and apologized. At this point I realized he had lied. I knew he had an online thrifting business spanning across multiple platforms. I couldn't find most of his accounts, but I found one, and he was actively selling several things of mine, and I could see in the history that he had been selling things quite soon after I left for my seasonal job in 2023. However, the history was only of items where the buyer had left reviews. I confronted him in person and he doubled down and said he donated many of my items that I'd previously left behind when I was in a stage where I was moving, often for school, and storing things in my bedroom. He claimed he hadn't touched anything since 2022 and had no idea where any of these newer items were. It's incredibly obvious he's lying. He never admitted to selling anything online and gave me his account info for things like Depop and Etsy. I only knew his eBay account much later in the evening. At that point I saw he'd removed the items from eBay he was actively selling that were mine, so I'm sure he did the same for the other websites. My dad refuses to get involved, and I'll get kicked out of his house if I file a police report. What I really want is to see a history of the listings to give me peace of mind and confirm everything that was stolen so I can let it go. I also want my brother to repay me several $1,000s at least for the items. Individual pieces were worth upwards of $100 each, and I think at least 100 items have been stolen. I don't really know how to further confront my brother since all he's done is lie, and I don't feel like I have a hand to play since I can't threaten legal action. I'm completely shocked because my brother essentially built his business off of selling clothes he stole from me and is seeing no recourse from it. My trust is completely broken and I feel gut punched. He still regularly visits the family house. TLDR, my brother stole and sold thousands of dollars worth of clothes for me to build his online thrifting business. He will not admit it and either lies directly or speaks in half-truths about it. I have no idea what to do or how to handle my relationship with him going forward since I still see him on a regular basis. Stories number 47. Curious case of Bhavna Pandey. People talk about Gauri Khan's networking and how she has managed to establish relationships with most of the influential folks in Birmingham town. However, it's Bhavna's skill that amazes me. I have seen old Leatheran videos of movie premieres and she will attend them with Chunky, and one in particular was that of Govinda's movie, and she and Chunky seemed very much in awe of Govinda. Of course Govinda was bigger star then, but this is just an example of how this couple has always been in Bolly limelight. Gauri was initially close to Dean Pandey, Chicky Pandey's wife, but I haven't seen their pictures together. Even Chicky was the one that helped SRK to get the bail when he beat up a journalist and was jailed. From Pandey family only Chunky is involved in movies, so it is interesting how Bhavna maintained ties with everyone when we did not see Chunky in movies much. Plus, Bhavna was and still is in Gauri's inner circle. Got her daughter debuted with Dharma even though Maheep struggled with it. Got Ananya access to Lobal, and as was shown in Flob, made Ananya and Chunky practice a lot for the dance. And Sanjay Kapoor cracked a joke of how Bhavna is the new Babita, referring to Babita's involvement in Karina's and Karishma's career. In the series Flob 2, Bhavna comes off as sordid. This could be pretend or magic of editing, but she does carry herself with some dignity. And even though all of them are subpar, Ananya seems to be doing better as compared to Sarah, Jahanvi, or Alaya F. I read this interview of Ananya where she mentioned that Bhavna sent her to Tiger, before she was cast for Student of the Year 2, to get tips for preparing for her acting career. Bhavna and Aisha Ashraf are good friends and hence Ananya had access to Tiger. From all these instances, it seems like Bhavna is a good strategist as compared to Mahip or any other mothers, considering Bhavana's stature within Bollywood, intending for her daughter's debut. Stories number 48, Am I the asshole? For not supporting my wife financially immediately after divorce papers are served. My wife filed for divorce last week, and as many are, it was surprising. That evening half of all our joint savings, checking, etc. was gone. I took the other half and closed the account next day. In the divorce her requests are fair, $6,000 for what she contributed to our home projects, home taxes, and I keep my home. Totally fine, very fair. Well, I get a call from her the day after asking why there was no money in our account and if I took it. Yes, I took my half and closed. Well, apparently, she was going in there to pull funds out because I owed her that $6,000. I did tell her that was fair, but I explained I don't just have $6,000 right now, I had expected split bills in the future, been saving for years insurance and taxes, etc. It felt weird because we aren't even at the end yet. It was filed last week and I haven't even responded yet. I care for her very much, and she is very kind. Neither of us wants to do any damage. She's looking at $5,000 to get an apartment, deposits, rent etc., so she was asking for it. Now, I know she has money because she has some savings, and she took her half from our accounts which was about $6,000 already. I would love to help her, but I feel I need to really be mindful of my own finances going into a long, dark, and isolated winter in the country. It just all caught me off guard with the papers, and while I'll be fine, it'd be a lot of pressure to just fund her new adventure right off the bat. It feels I don't owe anything until the judge signs off and we all agree. I was able to explain my side, and oddly she understood, which is always have to fight for any compromise, but I could feel the frustration of me pushing back on giving money. So now she'd like me to sign and notarize a letter together that says I will have paid her in full by 20 date, March. Our court date isn't until March 1st, but I'm concerned about signing anything. I keep thinking what if disaster strikes and I get ill, or my car is totaled, or snow load collapses roof. I then have some document saying I owe her, when I can't pay. I care for her a lot, and honestly it hurts knowing how stressed she is and all she's dealing with. It's not easy on anyone. I want to support her, and feel I should start incrementally paying her back if I can, maybe send $1,000 a month or something. It feels like helping her would represent my values of trying to help anyone who is down and out, to create a better way to treat others even if they've caused pain. Foster a world where divorce isn't bitter, but just another journey of life where two people help the others return to being healthy and happy. Am I the asshole for not supporting my wife while going through this, or should I really be waiting for judgment to fall? I have no plans of contesting her for the money, but paying now feels weird. Stories number 49. How do I, 31F, tell my partner, 33M, that his lack of attendance at a family wedding is still bothering me? My partner and I have been together for 8 years. I moved to a different state a few years ago to be with him after we were long distance for about 3 years. Since I moved, I have spent holidays with his family, we see his parents every week, and we host his friends for dinner pretty frequently. I go back home to Idaho a few times a year. I am very close with my family, and if I didn't have such great communication with them, I don't think I could live so far. My cousin sent wedding invites in March for her November wedding and I RSVP'd for us then. He had said he could go. Fast forward to October and he and a group of people at his work started to plan an event for some kids in the community. He warned me it may be the weekend of my cousin's wedding and I said I would really prefer it wasn't. It ended up being that weekend. He said he tried changing it and one of the people planning it was adamant about it being that weekend. I shared that I was bummed and asked if he had to be there. He said yes, unfortunately. Last weekend, some of his friends came over and we were talking about the wedding. Someone made a comment about my partner not going and one of the friends, who helped plan the event, said my partner was the one who chose the date. He got defensive and we dropped it so we didn't have an argument in front of anyone. Later, I confronted him about it and he said it wasn't true. I told him it bothered me that he wasn't coming to the wedding and he apologized and said he wished he could go. The wedding is tonight and I am still so upset. I want him to know I am upset but he already knows, so what more can I even say? I want to set a boundary. I do so much for his family and he couldn't even skip a work event for mine. How do I communicate this without it seeming like I am keeping score of what I do for him? Stories number 50. Am I the asshole for refusing to eat the food my FIL made and lying about why? So I, 26F, have been married to my husband Nicholas, 29M, for over a year. He was raised in the UK, his father is Greek and his mother is English. When his parents got divorced, his father moved back to Greece, and because Nico has always had a strained relationship with his father, they don't talk or see each other very much, but they tend to get together to have dinner whenever he's back in the UK. This time he was back for a month and he rented out an apartment, and so he invited around the both of us around. He didn't specify that we were going to eat anything, just said we could have a few drinks and chat. I've only met him once or twice before now, and I didn't see any reason not to do so and figured that it would be some good backup for Nico if he wanted to leave early or anything. So we went around yesterday at around 9 p.m. When we got there, Phil had made a traditional Greek dish called spanakopita, sort of like a pie but it's made with phyllo pastry. It has spinach and feta. For context, I have a history of anorexia, and eating in front of people that I don't really know is still an issue for me, and anything with pastry is something that I tend to avoid even now. He was pleasant enough, welcomed us all in and offered us the food, and I said no thank you because I was anxious with the situation. Nico caught on that I was uncomfortable and so told his dad that we'd already eaten, but his dad kept insisting that we should try it. At us saying no again, he got very up in arms about how he'd gone to the effort of making the food, and that it shouldn't be such an issue for us to just have some of it, and that he felt as though we were disrespecting him by refusing to eat the food. So husband and I apologized, offered to stay for drinks, but ultimately left as he remained angry about the situation. I know I could have explained why I didn't want to eat it, but I felt uncomfortable trauma dumping on him about the real reason why. Or I could have tried a little bit and then just left it and he probably would have been fine. Am I the asshole? Stories number 51. My 35M partner, 34F, cheated and ran off with the new guy, 31M, and now has issues keeping a roof over her head. February 9, 2024. Hello everyone. Writing this on mobile, please forgive formatting errors. I was in a decade-long relationship with the person mentioned in the title. We have a child together who is in first grade. Recently, I discovered she was siphoning from our daughter's money I would put away every month, school fees and savings, as well as using her salary to fund expensive hotel/guest house stays with one of her employees under the guise of work. I called her out on this as soon as I'd found out, and her new guy's reaction was to send people to my house. She gave him the address. I would later find out, to clean up everybody living in it for lack of better terms. I wouldn't include this if not a necessary part of the story. Please forgive if it treads any lines with the sub-rules. Her reaction to that? I antagonized him by confronting her, so no foul in her book. I am blowing it out of proportion despite multiple voice notes and text messages. I kicked her out of the house due to obvious danger in this, and her new guy cannot help her with a place to stay. Without giving too much away, she earns less than half of what I do and he earns a quarter of what she does. She's currently couch surfing around her friends/relatives' places while he allegedly lives with his mother in a studio apartment. Recently, she's contacted me to ask me to co-sign on a lease with her as she doesn't have any other options, and while I want to help her because I care about her, I also feel she has made her own bed and should lay in it alone, or with that guy. The consequence of all this up and down is that legally, he's not allowed anywhere near our daughter anymore, so the two of them moving in together would likely mean she cannot see our daughter anywhere that isn't neutral ground because I don't want her at my place. She knows this, and this is partially why she asked for my help, as if the other guy signs with her, he will want to move in with her. Should I feel bad and help her out? Should I tell her this is her doing and leave her to her own devices? Terribly conflicted. What do I do, guys? Update. Thank you for your advice, everyone. There are simply too many comments to respond to them all. I have a small update to share with you. I'll make a full-blown post probably a week or so from now depending on how things go. My now ex has voluntarily checked into a shelter/home for women whose lives have come off the rails tonight, and after speaking with them, they've assured me that she is indeed there tonight and that they test for drugs as part of the admission process and as part of the ongoing board/lodging requirements. It warms my heart somewhat that she understands that she needs help. This covers the roof over her head temporarily and makes sure she is on the straight and narrow for the next little while. I think it may be too late to salvage our relationship and trust, but I wish her the best in recovery. Lastly, someone here has reached out to me who knows me in real life, as this story is a big deal in my local community. They've pointed out that the AP/junkie/whatever is indeed among the comments here, and I hope he too is learning from the responses of others about being a decent human being. Update 2. Today was a frustrating one. It was the restraining order hearing and he, AP, didn't turn up to court. It is important to note that while I have an interim order against him, we have to complete this stage of the process to get a 5-year/10-year/permanent order instated, as the interim expires at the end of February. Judge insists that there is not enough in the dozen voice notes, 4 call recordings and 7 pages of pretty explicit text threats to deliver a verdict in absentia and set another date for April so he can be allowed to tell his side of the story. For those of you who have asked about calling the cops/going the legal route, this is why I have zero faith in my local justice system. Personal note, to you, homewrecker, I know you are here reading this and posting snide comments. My ex, your new puppet has told me as much and looking at them, it's obvious to me. You were a big man when you made direct, repeated threats of what you want to do to a little girl which I won't go into the content of here, but we both know you meant more than the cleanup act you promised. If you are not man enough to sort this out as men supposedly do, at least have the cojones to explain yourself to myself and the court. Hell, tell everyone here and see what these folks make of it for some free peer review opportunities before we see the judge. Thank you again, everyone. Except you, AP, see you in court. Hello everyone. I know I promised an update sooner but there were many more twists in the tale after the last post and I've been busy trying to keep my and my daughter's heads above water. Old stuff. AP, 31M, no-showed once again on the court date and they furnished me with a cop-out order. Basically if he approaches me, turns up at my house etc. I can have him arrested. No actual punishment handed out, a month ago. Ex convinced a friend, this will be important later, to co-sign a lease with her a few miles away from my residence. She and the AP moved in together, 2 weeks ago. New, not exactly stuff. AP was thrown out and nearly arrested after lashing out at her violently believing me to be trying to woo her back via text. AP has told a mutual friend between us that I was texting his new GF/ my ex all manner of flirty and provocative things. I knew nothing about this, a week ago. Present day, I find out that she had my name saved as a smokescreen on her phone. The friend she co-signed with was the person she was really exchanging inappropriate texts with. When AP looked through her phone and found my name sending nudes etc. in her messages he flipped out and confronted me over the phone. Thank the Lord for WhatsApp screen share, I quickly showed him that I had nothing to do with any of that. The friend she co-signed with proposed marriage, she accepted which she insists is we just met each other at the right time which she wants me to believe was a week after breaking up with AP. Unfortunately for her, it is not difficult nor illegal for me to find out who is on whatever property's paperwork. I suppose in essence, she was seeing someone behind my back for at least 2 years and used this other junkie as something to get caught out on deliberately while waiting for myself and that junkie AP to potentially seriously maim, or worse, each other while she eloped into the sunset with this other bloke and our daughter. I don't know what to make of any of this. I thought I was recovering really well until I got wind of this and now the levels of deceit are hurting me something awful. All the nights of eating canned beans and bread, sometimes not eating at all, so our daughter could eat decently every night when we supposedly didn't have money. X was never hungry which I found out was because she was eating full meals at swanky restaurants before coming home from late shifts. All of it was because she was spending money in our joint account on 2 different dudes. I don't know guys, I might be back with another update, I might not, but thank you all for your advice, criticism and opinions. Edit, I've left out some context on the money trouble. X had signed our daughter up for some of the best extramural activities, with my blessing, with some of the most reputable places in the country, karate, ballet etc., which is expensive. She paid none of those bills barring the initial month's payments, from joint account using my money. She didn't contribute a total of 10% to the fund, and drew cash which she said was to pay those. The owners of those schools are now after me for the money which is in the dozens of thousands. I have instigated legal action but until that happens, I am on the hook for the entire balance. Hope this explains it. Edit 2, more context around some of the DM comments about but she's right, it was your choice to do all that for her. I don't have any family in a 20-hour drive radius anymore, her family disowned her and threw her out years ago to start with. We had some real hard times not long after our daughter was born because of an economic crunch in my country with no rising wages to combat that. I know it was my choice to help build the 2 of us up but when I didn't have gas/train/bus money, I was walking to and from work to feed someone who stayed home and looked after our baby, something I still see as a fair half of the bargain. That said, 13 miles there, 13 miles back in rain, snow, sun, whatever, no matter how sick I got, 7 days a week because I needed the extra shifts. I didn't eat well for those horrible 7 months, times were that bad. I never did it to say but I did this for you, it was always we earned this for ourselves. For her to do this to me/our kid at this point knowing what hell I'd put myself through to get us here, getting her the cushy job she has today, it grates me. Sorry for the rant, but FFS. That it was your choice to, and she uses these words too, argument tells me how dead in the water we might be as a global society. Current situation. X and I are on speaking terms when it pertains to our little one, while it has not been much. She has contributed somewhat to tuition/school costs over the last 2 months. For reference, the current split on the essential costs is approximately 85% from me and the remaining 15% from her. She and original AP co-signed on a lease about 10 minutes drive from my house and just about a month later, they broke up. She was almost immediately engaged to someone else, he seems nice, to be fair, and the original AP was out of the picture. These people all work for the same company and it seems she's the manager. I know this for a fact with original AP, not certain whether the new guy reports to her as well. I'm tired, guys. Working my day job, 50 to 60 hours a week, and doing a whole lot of side jobs to make ends full-time parenting, while she's living her life on the other side. Admittedly struggling, but a lot less stress than I have. We're getting back on our feet slowly but surely, but this is soul-crushing to say the least. I've basically lost all the money I'd earned in the past 16 years through all of this, and her constant response is, but it was your choice to support me when we're still together. The new questions. I found someone else, so that's nice. We were an item from 2010 to 2014 and were just in two very different phases of life at the time. Now we're back together and she's been wonderful, helping support where she can mentally, emotionally, and even financially on occasion. Of course, I pay that back as soon as I can each month, and she doesn't want to hear no when I ask her not to pay certain things or go above and beyond for myself and my child and making our lives easier, even though she has her own kids. She's literally been paying off some of the bills behind my back, and it's so sweet it scares me because I don't know affection like this. Is it PTSD I'm going through? The ex does not want my new person meeting our kid but wants her new fiancé to be involved. What do I do with this? I suppose what I really want advice on is, while I am infinitely grateful for her as a person, keeping my mind straight and her assistance with everything else, she says it's just money and that she doesn't care about it. She just wants me back at my best to focus on us, but I feel somewhat uncomfortable with it as I don't like feeling as though I owe someone. How do I lay down some boundaries with my new person doing such wonderful things for me? Would this spoil things between us? Stories number 52. My mom feels my sister should have married my husband instead of me. I am upset at my mom and my sister because of something my mother said, but everyone around me feels I am overreacting. Please be brutally honest in telling me if I am being insecure, or if my mom and my husband are wrong in this. Let me give you a bit of backstory. My husband James, 34M, and I, 29F, were neighbors growing up. My sister, Fran, 34F, was in the same grade as my husband growing up. Everyone knew my sister in school because she is very smart and beautiful. James had a huge crush on her and all of us knew about it. He asked her out for senior prom and Fran shot him down, in front of the whole school. They still remained friends, but he moved to a different state for college, and we did not hear much from him, except see him when he came back for holidays. James and I were never friends growing up, since I was in middle school when this happened. In fact, I was much younger than both of them, and they would actively avoid me or involving me in their hangouts and activities. I went to a good college and got my first job in the same city as James. My mom suggested I should contact James, since I did not know anyone there. We became friends and 3 years later, we got married. We both have high-paying jobs and love our life. We moved back to our hometown during COVID as James's mom had health issues, and our jobs allowed us to work remotely. Fran also had a pretty good life. She married when she was 23 and her husband was pretty well off. 2 years ago, Fran discovered that he was cheating on her for almost the entire duration of their marriage with multiple partners, and she decided to break things off. Fran moved back with my mom. Fran had not worked for the entire duration of their marriage and was expecting to gain significant alimony from the divorce. However, due to complications regarding prenup, she barely got anything and is struggling financially. She got a job but is barely able to afford her own place and continues living with my mom. James and I were very supportive of her during the whole process. Since James and Fran were friends growing up, they both have a special bond. They have their inside jokes and stories, and I sometimes feel like a third wheel when we all meet. However, James keeps his distance and has never given me any reason to believe that he has lingering feelings for her. Fran, on the other hand, constantly visits us, like 2 to 3 times a week, and ends up staying for dinner and sleeping in our guest room. I don't mind her coming over, but I do not like the fact that she talks more to James than with me. Also, she always comes over when I am not at home, and I often find them sitting next to each other on sofa and watching TV when I get home. It sort of reminds me of my childhood where I was locked out of our basement when Fran had friends over, and I would feel left out. Fran is also too comfortable around James and walks around the house in just a towel after her shower when James is around, or sleep in her underwear in guest room without locking the door. I have voiced my concerns to her, but she says that we are family, and she does not care. I have also voiced my concerns to James, and he does make efforts now to explain stories and inside jokes if Fran makes them. The main issue happened this weekend. I was hanging out with my mom and Fran last weekend, and Fran was recollecting stories about how James would do her homework and do chores for her growing up. She said he was so much in love with me, and I felt guilty taking advantage of him. My mom jokingly said to her that I wish you had the wits to marry James than your loser husband and you would have not been in this situation. Fran smiled after hearing that and nodded, but I was hurt by the comment. I protested to my mom that James is my husband, and I do not want her to make such comments about him. My mom doubled down and said that she feels like it because both James and I are high earners, while Fran is struggling. So, it would make sense if Fran was married to James, and I would be fine since I do not need James to support me financially. She kept on saying that it was a hypothetical, and just wants both her daughters to be happy. I did not like those comments and told them to not speak like that about James and my marriage in general. Fran chimed in and told me that I should not take the comments so personally, and I am being too sensitive. However, I had a fight with both of them, and I left. When I came home, and told James, he also sided with my mom and Fran and told me that her mom just made a harmless joke. I also raised the issue of Fran's behavior around our house, and he told me that this is between me and my sister, and he is not going to tell Fran about what she can or cannot wear in our house. However, I am just feeling really bad since the situation, and despite everyone apologizing to me, things just don't feel right. Am I wrong here in reacting the way I did, or does everyone else have a point, and I should be more secure about my relationship with James? Thanks everyone for all your support on my previous post. To summarize what happened, my mom made a really off-putting comment that she wished my sister, Fran, was married to my husband, James. I got really mad, and my husband also tried to undermine my feelings and told me I was overreacting to a harmless joke. Sorry for the long post, but a lot of you were messaging me for update, and wanted to tell what happened. The comments really made me paranoid, and I did see everyone's point that James may have just married me because of his crush on Fran. This really shot up my anxiety, and I started snooping around. My husband literally makes me check his phone for new messages when he is not around. So, I knew there was nothing to hide there. However, I was spooked by how my sister always knows when I am not at home, and why James and Fran are always sitting on the same couch when I come home. I tried talking to my husband, and he told me that my feelings were valid. However, he also said that Fran is going through a tough time and refused to say anything bad about my mom and Fran. Last Friday, I went to gym as usual in the evening, and when I came home, Fran was sitting in the living room, while James was cooking dinner. I got a bit angry and asked her what she is doing here. She said had no plans for the night, and she came to hang out with us. It really annoyed me, and I told her that I wanted to spend a quiet weekend with my husband and if she can come some other time. She could see I was upset. She started saying how our mom was just being silly, and I need to let it go since it was just a joke. I told her I did not find it funny, and we got into a fight. She said that I am always an insecure, annoying kid and no wonder no one liked me. It really hurt me, but James stepped in and told Fran that she needs to leave. I have never seen James be so forceful with Fran. Fran muttered some unpleasant things to James, and then left. I was in tears by the end of the whole thing and James was consoling me. I was really upset and spent the night in our room alone. In the morning, I prepared notes on all things I wanted to ask James. Your comments really helped me get my thoughts straight. I know I was being very insecure, but after reading the comments, I really started questioning if James really married me for me, or just because I was Fran's sister and looked like her. People called me Dollar Store Fran in high school. James and I had a long conversation, and I told him my anxieties and insecurities. I told him how it makes me feel that he spends so much time with Fran when she visits us, and they have their own inside jokes. I asked him if he still has feelings for her. He was calm and smiling the whole time. He told me that he will tell me the truth but does not want me to hate him for it later. He said that he knows Fran used him all through their school days, because she knew he liked her. When he went to college, Fran still tried to keep in touch with him, but putting distance between them made him realize how badly she treated him, and he decided to just cut contact with her so that he can work on himself. That was the reason. He rarely visited us when he used to come for holidays and stopped being friends with Fran. I told him that it bothered me that he chose Fran before me and ignored me during our childhood. That was the reason I always had that doubt if I was his second choice. He said that I was 13 when he went to college and if he would have liked me instead of Fran at that age, we would be having a different problem. He told me that when I contacted him, he thought that I must be like Fran and was not very enthusiastic to meet me. However, after we hung out for few times, he realized I am nothing like Fran. We soon became close, started dating and got married after few years. He told me that Fran was married by then, and he saw that I always put Fran on the pedestal and would get jealous when Fran posted vacation pictures or the new, shiny things her husband bought for her. That was the reason he never told me that he does not like hanging around Fran as he feels that for me, Fran was always the North Star. He told me that he has always kept his distance from Fran, and she was a non-issue since we would meet her only few times every year. However, after her divorce, he did not know how to act. He said that he was grateful to me for uprooting our lives and moving back to our hometown for his mom's health. He wanted to do the same and take care of my family. When Fran got divorced, he supported her in every way he could for me, even though he realized it meant spending a lot of time with her and listening to her bring up all the memories from high school that he wants to forget. I told him it bothered me that Fran came to our house as often as she does, and generally in evenings when I go to gym. He told me that he also finds it odd that she knows my gym routine and always comes on evenings when I am not at home. However, he told me that he has always kept his distance from her, and if she did anything that would raise an alarm, he would have told me immediately. She just makes him all the old movies or TV shows they watched growing up, and gossips endlessly about their high school friends. He told me I need to trust him, and if I want him to be the bad guy and ask Fran to not visit us often, he can do that for me. However, he knows that I will eventually make up with my mom and Fran and does not want to blame him for being mean to Fran. However, he told me he will not tell Fran what to wear around the house, as it would be creepy if it came from him. I felt I got all the assurance I needed from James, and I will never doubt how amazing of a husband he has been. My mom and Fran visited us on Sunday, and my mom profusely apologized to me. She told me she does not want me to feel bad for her comment and she would never wish anything bad on my marriage. She meant to say that James was a great guy, and she hopes Fran can find someone like him one day. Fran was a bit sour but apologized to us for all the name calling on Friday and told us that it's just her hormones. She said that she likes hanging out with her sister and her best friend, and hence comes to our house. I told her she is welcome to come anytime she wants, but to call ahead of time in case James and I have plans for the evening, and she agreed. I really want to move past this issue, but I do want to put some firm boundaries on when Fran can come to our house and hang out with James alone, as I know it bothers him too. Overall, I feel things are good now. I am glad my worst fears did not come true, but I do feel I need some therapy in order to deal with my insecurities. I am not the original poster. Please don't contact or comment on linked posts. Stories number 53. My girlfriend got assaulted right in front of me. My 35F girlfriend, 32F, was groped whilst we were waiting for our Uber home last Friday night. It was around 1 a.m. and we were waiting at a bus stop in central London. This guy who had half an unlit cigarette hanging out of his mouth came up to us and first of all asked me if I had a lighter. I said no, and he moved on to my GF who was standing next to me maybe a meter or two away, and he asked her the same question, to which she also replied no. I thought that was that. I live in London, so I feel like I'm pretty used to the random, mostly innocuous encounters like these, especially late at night. And although we've had some unpleasant words thrown at us in the past from men who feel the need to comment about two women being together, these encounters generally do not faze me, and I am fortunate that nothing seriously bad has ever happened. Anyway, we both had our phones out as we were trying to book an Uber/Bolt to see which one would arrive quickest, so we were a bit distracted and obviously not giving this guy much attention. Instead of walking away after my GF replied no to his question about the lighter, he swung his arm out from underneath him and grabbed her crotch. In the moment she was stunned and basically just flinched, and before she could do much else I threw myself at him and pushed him away, shouting, "What the fuck? Fuck off," type stuff. He tried to grab me by the throat and I could see in his eyes and the way he was trying to position his body that he wanted to punch me, but he didn't. I was holding him by his shirt at the neck and just yanking and pushing him away, shouting at him. I was wearing a crossbody bag, so my girlfriend grabbed onto the strap behind me and yanked me back so that I wouldn't get in a full-on physical altercation with this guy. He walked away and I turned around and checked on my GF, who was just saying things like, "Stop trying to fight him, it's not worth it." At this point I'm desperately hoping for our Uber driver to arrive, and the guy fucking comes back, and of course I go lunging at him again, just telling him to fuck off, but again my GF holds me back. He's just shouting shit at us and eventually turns around and walks away. Thankfully our Uber driver finally arrives, and then it all suddenly hit and my GF starts crying. She cried the whole journey home and cried basically all night. I tried to comfort her, but she would just physically push me away or tell me to leave her alone, which was really tough and I didn't know what to do or say. Eventually we were lying in bed and I just held her for a long time without saying anything whilst she was sobbing, and eventually said, "I just need you to tell me that I'm safe and that it's not my fault," which of course I did, and managed to say a few other thoughts about the situation, but I just didn't think I could say anything to fix the way she was feeling. She asked me if I thought she was overreacting, and of course I said no, but I guess in the moment I didn't quite realize the gravity of what this guy did. He basically sexually assaulted her. He committed a crime. And so publicly, just in the middle of the street with witnesses around, like it was absolutely nothing. It's so gross and makes me feel so sick and so sad that this act was clearly so normal to this guy that he probably regularly attacks women and gets away with it every time. It's just so unfair. Luckily my GF managed to get over the shock of it, and we tried to not let it ruin our weekend. Obviously we are grateful it wasn't anything worse, but it was just a really shitty experience, and it sucks feeling so helpless in a situation like that. I just wanted to get this off my chest really. If anyone has experienced something similar, first of all I am so sorry, and if you are comfortable sharing how you helped each other through it, I would love to hear it, because I wish I could have been more supportive in the moment towards her, instead of just violent and reactive towards him, and found the right words to say to help her through it. Stories number 54. Can't fit my bicycle in the luggage hold. A few months ago I booked a return ticket to a nearby town over a busy holiday weekend. I wanted to do a little cycling over the weekend, so I phoned the bus company before the day of departure to check if I could take a bicycle with me. They confirmed that I could so long as I arrived at the bus station half an hour early. On the trip down they loaded my bicycle into the baggage hold, even opening up a special side hatch to make it easier to get it in. So I enjoyed a few bike rides while I was down there. Come the day of my return and it's belting rain. I get to the bus station half an hour early but sopping wet. Considerate as I am, I purchase some paper towels to wipe down my bike so it won't dampen anyone else's luggage. Then the bus arrives. I go straight over to the baggage loading area and ask the guy if I can put my bike in. He replies, no. Do I need to wait? No, he's just not going to let my bike on at all. So I spend a quarter of an hour arguing with the guy, as the clock ticks towards departure time. I tell him the bus company has already confirmed I could bring my bike, but that does not move him. He keeps telling me there's no space in the hold, even though I can see there's space in the hold. Now this is a Sunday and I have work the next day. And it's the end of a holiday weekend, so I might not be able to get a seat on another bus, even if they refund me my money. And nobody's talking about a refund. Finally, departure time has arrived. I yell out, well, head office said I could take it on the bus, so I'm taking it on the bus. And I hoik my bicycle in the air and step up into the passenger section of the bus and start making my way to my seat. Now, my seat was booked for the upper deck, so I also have to hoik my bike up the narrow spiral staircase to the upper deck, which I do. My bicycle is XL size, so, all things considered, I'm astonished how limited and shallow the scratches were that I left on the plastic finishes of the spiral staircase as I went up. Amazingly, no one made any move to stop me, and the passengers on the upper deck all came onto my side, helping me to secure the bicycle and making no complaint about having to squeeze past it, even though it almost entirely blocked the corridor. Every now and then the conductor would come up to check our tickets, see the bicycle blocking the way, and turn away defeated. Every time he did so, I made sure to say loudly to my fellow passengers, I dunno, to me it would have made more sense to put it in the hold, but it's their bus. They make the rules. And the other passengers would agree with me. The bike and I got home safely. Stories number 55. My boyfriend is insisting we get married. I 20F have been dating my boyfriend 22M for 6 months now. Recently, it has been brought to the government's attention that he is not a citizen of the country we reside in. Currently, he is at risk for deportation back to his home country. He suggested the idea that we should get married so he can increase his chances of staying in this country. Note, I am currently enrolled in post-secondary education and I still live with my parents, so this option is not very plausible for me. He insists that we get a marriage license in which I do not have to inform my parents about and just follow through with it for the time it could take to approve his status. This could take months to years to complete, and this requires me to change my last name for every legal document, i.e., driver's license, financial aid, banking, etc. I continuously tell him that I am not interested in following through with his idea. He insists that because I am his girlfriend, I am obligated to do this for him. Even though I tell him no, he keeps insisting. Stories number 56. Am I the asshole for refusing to babysit when my parents asked because they wouldn't pay me? My parents have me, 16M, and my younger siblings, 12F, 10M and 7F. My younger siblings get an allowance for the chores they do, which is 1 chore each, and for that they get $20 a week. While I never got an allowance for doing my chores, and I have 5 chores, making 4 beds every morning, keeping the kid living room tidy, doing laundry twice a week, cooking for the family once a week and cleaning my siblings' lunch boxes after school. I always had multiple chores. This list has been the same for 5 years. Before that the only difference was cooking, since I didn't cook 1 night a week. But laundry was added when I was like 7 or 8. My siblings' chores are, carry dishes to whoever washes up, 7F, start the robo vacuum, 10M, and make sure the fridge always has bottled water, 12F. I asked my parents why my siblings get paid, but I don't even know I do more. They told me it was the responsibility of being the oldest and they shouldn't need to pay me to be a good brother and son. Then they hated when I got a job because some of my chores were done at different times than they used to be. I told them I wanted money, and since they decided I wasn't worth paying like my siblings were, I got a real job instead. To be clear, I still do my chores. But instead of the lunch boxes being done right after school on Friday, it happens after work. The kid living room is messier longer because I'll be at work while my siblings are making a mess. My parents want to go on an overnight date night and they ask me to babysit. I asked them what they were paying and they said nothing, it would be another chore. I told them I won't babysit then and I'll only babysit if I get paid. They told me they can't afford to pay me and I replied that I was tired of being screwed over by them while they pay my younger siblings. They told me I was being a brat and they can make me babysit. I reminded them that they get what they pay for. Stories number 57. Am I the asshole? For allowing my friend to bring her stuffed animal to me and my fiancé's wedding, I, 27F, am getting married to my fiancé K, 26M. Our wedding is only a few months away. This problem has to do with my friend Kennedy, 27F, who is also gonna be a bridesmaid. She has autism and always has some sort of plush with her to squeeze and hold on to when we're out, along with a pair of headphones. A few years ago I got her a frog plush from Build-A-Bear for her birthday and she loved it. She named it Hocus and loves buying and making clothes for it. Even her boyfriend thinks it's adorable how attached she is to it today. My fiancé never had a problem with Kennedy until she asked if it was okay to bring Hocus with her to our wedding. I don't know why but it upset him and he told her no. I asked him about it later that day and he said it would be weird and childish. But I never really thought it was childish. When she does bring Hocus out with her she just has it sitting on her lap and squeezing its hand. This might be where I am the asshole because I told Kennedy it's fine if she brings it along. Even encourage her to make a dress for it that matched the one she was gonna wear, pink. My fiancé found out and was livid. I tried to tell him that it wasn't a big deal and that it was just a stuffed animal that wouldn't draw any attention. Even then he still won't budge and is refusing to talk to me. Was I really wrong? Hi. Thank you to everyone for the supports and advice. I currently talking to my fiancé and attempt to compromise with him. And I love the ideas some of you are thinking of. We will have Hocus in some of the bridesmaid photos with every bridesmaid's approval. If Kay agrees to keep him there, and Kennedy's about to start getting to work on the dress as soon as she finds the fabric the same color as the dress. Stories number 58. Do not interrupt when I'm talking. This was a few years back. After over a decade of doing a complex job, above average, getting many compliments/letters of thanks, my new boss was irritated at me interrupting. My role was everything the technical people didn't do, trash duty/phone/conference room/calendar/finance/training/facilities/purchasing/equipment, etc. It was realistic to say that a couple times a day some wildfires, often technical work stoppages, needed the boss input. This, even after I headed off many problems before they reached his attention. About a couple weeks in, he told me that under no circumstance was I to interrupt any conversations he was in and like a good little bootlicker. The second in charge added that he too was tired of my interruptions too and needed to stop. As karma would have it, not even a day later, both of them were deep into a conversation about baseball, absolutely nothing to do with work and normally I would have interrupted. They both saw me multiple times and didn't ask what I needed. I waited patiently with pleading eyes, while they stretched out their conversation. After a few minutes, I started shifting foot to foot, probably looked like I needed to use the bathroom, and yet they didn't stop. Finally, when they soaked up all the fun they could and ran out of baseball's things to say, the boss in a very snarky tone asks if there is something I needed him for. Yes, sir. Your boss's boss, Mr. Nameless here, is waiting on the phone. I could see the blinking phone line from where I was standing, and he was indeed still waiting, and he needs to speak to you right now. Not one smirk or iota of disrespect from me, but I did leave to use the bathroom even though I didn't need it. Policy cancelled right after that call. Stories number 59. My 40M boyfriend recently told me, 40F, that he lied about the age of his children. How do I decide how to proceed? On our first date in July, he told me that his children were aged 4 and 2. A month or two into the relationship he lied to me about something unrelated. I made clear to him that honesty is very important to me and if he lies to me again it will be a deal-breaker. It turns out that his children are 2.5 and 1.5. He told me this out of the blue yesterday. He says that other women didn't give him a chance after hearing his children's ages and this is why he lied on the first date. Even though he technically verbalized the lie before I told him lying is a deal-breaker, I feel like he has been lying this whole time by not correcting it sooner. I am worried that if I don't end the relationship I wouldn't be sticking to my boundaries. But, the whole situation seems so gray to me. He volunteered the information freely yesterday and he didn't correct the lie sooner because he was scared. Basically I have no idea what to think or do about this and any insight would be greatly appreciated. Stories number 60. Am I the asshole? For not allowing my son to be punished after he refused to do his school presentation. My son, George, just turned 13 this month. George is very bright, projected to get 8s or 9s in his GCSEs, and regularly achieves these grades in his mock exams and assessments. But he struggles socially and has been bullied badly in the past. Things are better now, but he isn't popular. As part of his PD class, he had to create a children's toy and give a sales pitch to the class. Last Friday was the presentation day, and George was really excited. He'd put a lot of effort into his toy and the presentation. But I got a notification saying George had been given a C3, after school detention, something he's never received before, as he'd refused to participate in class and didn't do his presentation. When I picked him up, I could tell immediately that he was upset. I asked him what happened and why he didn't do the presentation. He said he didn't refuse the presentation. When it was his turn, he asked to go later. His teacher said no, and that he had to do it then or get a C3. George said he couldn't do it now, but didn't explain further when asked, so he was given the C3. I kept pressing him, worried that maybe he was being bullied again. Eventually, he told me the real reason. He had a random erection just before his turn and, no matter what, it wouldn't go down. With that info, I think George's request was perfectly reasonable. He didn't refuse to do the presentation, he simply asked to do it a little later. Obviously, he didn't want to explain the reason in front of the whole class when the teacher asked him. His mum was really angry with him for getting the C3. I explained what happened and said I didn't think George was wrong. I said I'm not supporting the detention and would pick him up at the normal time. When I told his mum what happened, she looked disgusted and said something like, "Why did he even have one in class to begin with?" I explained that random erections happen, especially in early puberty, and they don't always relate to sexual thoughts, which is what she was assuming. She replied, "Well, I'm not sure that's true," dismissing what I said. So I told her, "You might not be sure, but I am." She insisted we needed to present a united front, along with the school, and that by going against her, I was sending George the wrong message. I asked why her way of handling it was automatically right and why I should be the one to concede. It escalated into a big argument, which we haven't had in years. She's saying she is going to punish him for refusing when it's her week with him next week and that I am being an AH for going against her. Her mother texts me saying I was setting a bad example for George by letting him get away with being disrespectful to his teacher. Which he wasn't even, just asked to do his presentation later. I respectfully told her she should mind her own business, and that George was my son. But now I'm worrying whether I've done the right thing, and I need some outside perspectives. I wanted to come on and give a little update about how I handled everything with his George and his school and clarify some things as well. I'm writing this on the Sunday, and it's currently half-term for George so he has a week off school. Firstly, George was never able to give his presentation, which he was really upset about because he had worked so hard on it. But the presentations aren't graded. I think this was a difference between the US and English education system. We don't generally have graded projects, at least I never did and neither does George. Also side note, but we can't repeat a year, or grade, here. At George's school he gets his effort grades at the end of each term, and he does a mock GCSE-style exam at the end of each year which we get given the results. But these don't actually matter, they're just to give insight of how they're doing and to give practice for his real GCSEs when he's in year 11. On to another thing, many people commented that I should have shown him the old lift and tuck. I can tell you he already knows the trick. His school requires that he wears formal suit trousers, and if anyone has worn those type of trousers before, you know you can't do the lift and tuck effectively. And even if you could, a large bulge would still be easily noticeable. Okay, on to what happened with his school. So his head of year rang me after school on Tuesday and we arranged a meeting on Wednesday. I told George that he didn't have to share the details of exactly why he didn't want to do the presentation unless he felt comfortable sharing it. I wasn't going to force it out of him. The class teacher who gave him the after-school detention didn't come to the meeting. So it was just me, George and his hoy. His hoy is a really decent guy and he has a great relationship with George. His hoy started with saying he was so shocked when he learned that George had been given a C3, since it was so unlike him, and asked what happened. Like I said, George has a great relationship with the hoy, so George started trying to explain. He didn't say, "I had an erection," he said something along the lines of something embarrassing was happening with my body and I just couldn't stand up when teacher called me. Hoy looked slightly puzzled for a brief moment, but then I think realized what George was trying to say and said something like, "Oh, no need to explain further, I was a teen once too, I understand." I went on to say about how they're aware he has a history of bullying, and he struggles with friends, and how I felt the teacher could have handled the situation differently. Hoy agreed, said he would discuss it with the teacher and he would cancel the C3 for George. I thanked him and he encouraged George to come to him with any problems in future instead of just getting upset and staying quiet. I thanked him. Now, on to George's mother. I wish I could say things went as well with her as they did with the school. I'm honestly not sure what's up with her, but she isn't usually like this. A lot of people were commenting that she sounds very unreasonable. In that moment I do agree with you, but normally she is not like that and we have a great friendship even though we are not in a romantic relationship anymore. She ended up ringing George to tell him that she wanted him to go to the C3 whether it had been cancelled or not. George rightfully said that was ridiculous and that he wasn't going to do that. They both ended up having a huge argument. She sent me a tirade of messages about how disrespectful I am, I'm not, how I was raising him to be entitled, not true, how he'll end up in prison because he doesn't understand consequences, he won't and he does. I turned off the notifications for her messages and just left her to it. I am meant to drop the boys off at her house tomorrow for her week with them, but George has said he doesn't want to go. At this point I am of two minds on whether to support that decision or not. On one hand I wouldn't want her to ever encourage either of the boys to not spend their week with me, but on the other hand it should be his choice. I feel like I'm walking on thin ice here and I am honestly not sure how to navigate it. I could stay out of it completely and just let him make the choice, but maybe encourage him to spend his week with her. Because I think that's how I would like her to handle it. I do feel really conflicted. If you read all this, thank you. Stories number 61. Am I the asshole for thinking my brother should dump his girlfriend after what happened on their trip? Hi Reddit, I'm a 21-year-old woman, and this post is about my brother's girlfriend, Laura, not her real name. She's 18, and they've been together for about 8 months. At first, I really liked Laura. She seemed down to earth, especially compared to his previous girlfriends, who were kind of odd. Laura comes from a family with less money than ours. We're not rich, but we're comfortable. Lately, I've started feeling like she might be using us. A few weeks ago, my brother took her on a trip to Cuba and paid for everything because she didn't have the money. She still owes him $800 and hasn't paid him back yet. She also borrowed my mom's suitcase for the trip and still hasn't returned it or even unpacked her things. Before the trip, she told me she wasn't sure she wanted to stay with him because she felt like she hadn't experienced her young adult life fully, like going out to clubs and partying. During the trip, my brother told me that guys were constantly giving her attention, and she seemed to enjoy it. He mentioned that she was distant with him at times, but at the same time, they were still taking pictures kissing and acting like a couple. It's confusing because I know she wants to break up with him, but she isn't doing anything about it, and instead, she's being rude to him. What's also been bothering me is how she's acted about money and things. When we first met, I was cleaning out my closet, and she offered to help. I thought it was just her being kind, but now I feel like she just wanted me to give her clothes. I ended up giving her some really expensive dresses, like $300 each, which I don't wear anymore because they don't fit me, but now I regret it. She's also taken a bunch of expensive things from my mom after my mom and stepdad broke up, like her old bed and kitchen appliances. I do her lash lifts, and I paid for the supplies, but she never paid me back like she promised. She lives an hour away, and after the Cuba trip, she asked me to come to her house to do her lashes again. I refused because I didn't want to waste more money on gas, especially when she hasn't paid me for the supplies. Recently, she's been getting more and more rude. She texted me out of the blue saying, "So I need a costume. Are you gonna give me one or do I need to get it myself?" I was taken aback. Why should I be responsible for her costume? When I asked if she had any idea what she wanted to be, she just said, "Ick." She was also mad at me for doing the Halloween decorations without her because she wanted to help, but I did it on a Saturday night around 9 p.m. So I didn't think it was relevant for her to come over and help. She wants to go clubbing for Halloween, but honestly, I'm not in the mood to party, and I have a lot of homework. My brother wants me to go so we can hang out with some friends, but now he wants to go to the club to check on her and see if she's going to cheat because he thinks she might have already cheated on him. I also forgot to add that during their vacation, a few things happened that made me feel uneasy about her. For example, she spent an hour on the phone with her mom, causing them to miss a reservation my brother had made. While they were there, they made some friends, and she always wanted to hang out with them instead of spending time alone with my brother. When they got back, my brother caught the flu, and I was shocked by how she treated him. He was really sick, throwing up and having stomach issues, and she seemed annoyed by it. Even when he was struggling in the bathroom, she just sat there on her phone, completely ignoring him. On the flight home, he was so sick that he threw up on a lady while rushing to the bathroom, and she didn't even try to comfort him or help clean up. Now, I don't know what to do. I feel like she's using us, but it doesn't completely feel like her. I'm also conflicted because she told me things in private, and I'm unsure if I should tell my brother, even though he kind of already knows and has a gut feeling. So, am I the asshole for wanting him to break up with her? I think there might be some misunderstandings here, so let me clarify. My brother paid for the Cuba trip up front because it cost $1,200 per person, and she didn't have the money at the time. She agreed to pay him back her share, and that's why she still owes him $800. He covered the full amount initially, but it wasn't meant to be a gift, it was more like a loan that she hasn't fully repaid yet. Regarding the clothes and furniture, I didn't mind giving her old clothes that didn't fit me, and my mom didn't need the furniture, so at the time, it seemed like helping her out. But I started feeling like she's taking advantage because she also borrowed my mom's suitcase and hasn't returned it yet. And there are other things adding up, like unpaid lash supplies and some insensitive comments. About the flight, I didn't expect her to literally clean up his vomit, but showing a bit of concern or care for someone you're in a relationship with, especially when they're really sick, seems reasonable to me. He wasn't sick before the flight, he got sick after brushing his teeth with the water in Cuba, and it hit him unexpectedly on the plane. I totally get that she's 18 and trying to figure out her life, and she doesn't have to decide if she's going to be with him forever right now. But if she's already uncertain about wanting to stay with him and doesn't seem interested in spending much quality time together on what was supposed to be a couple's trip. She's not a bad person, I just want my brother to be with someone who genuinely wants to be with him and cares about him. He's my little brother, and I think part of the reason I'm so protective is because of what he went through in the past. When my mom was with my stepdad, he was psychologically abusive to my brother, calling him names and putting him down. At the time, I wasn't living with them, and I feel guilty for not being there to protect him. My mom didn't really know about it, and she was also being abused herself, so it wasn't an easy situation for anyone. Because of all this, my brother is very sensitive now, and I can't help but want to look out for him. I know he needs to make his own decisions, but it's hard not to feel like I need to be there for him more, given what he's been through. I realize that I can't control his choices, but that guilt makes me want to step in more than I probably should. I just want to make sure he's with someone who cares for him and treats him well. I don't really know if it's the way to do it, but I tried. Hey guys, I wanted to do a little update and also share more about the past so you can understand where I'm coming from. First, thank you for all your comments. You guys think I'm not the asshole, which is reassuring, but I still kind of feel like one. I've been trying to respond to everyone, but there were a lot of questions about my brother's age. He's 19, not 21, and he's definitely not a predator, don't worry. Part of why I'm so invested in this situation is because I can relate to his girlfriend. When I was 18, the legal drinking age here allowed me to experience a phase of partying and living my life to the fullest. Back then, I was in a 3-year relationship, and we went through the pandemic together. I wasn't feeling the relationship anymore, so I broke up with him and lived my life. I just want to say that it wasn't an easy decision. We actually got back together after 1.5 years of being single, which is kind of crazy, but it felt like a fresh start. The point is, when I saw her and how she acted, I saw a bit of myself in her. I brought up my own experiences to her because I knew how lonely it could feel when you're unsure about what you want, and no one around you seems to understand. I thought it might help her feel like she could trust me, but now I feel stuck in the middle and I don't know if I regret what I did. This week, my brother confronted her about the way she responded to me through text, telling her it hurt him and that he didn't accept her talking to his family like that. She got upset and felt like we were all ganging up on her, so she decided not to stay the night and went back to her house. My brother was mad and called me. He was telling me that he wanted to break up, but since she owed him money and he wanted his money back. That's when I told him what she had confessed to me, and I felt awful because I had promised her I wouldn't say anything. I initiated that conversation, so I felt like the fallout was all my fault. But this morning, my brother called me before work and said she texted him, asking for a break. He was furious and told me he planned to get all his things from her place and end it. She's going out to a big city with her sister next weekend and he thinks she wants to use that time to meet other guys, and he made it clear that if that's what she wants, he's done. She said that wasn't her intention and that she just needed some time, but he wasn't buying it. Now I feel even worse because I can't help but think that if I hadn't shared my experience with her, maybe this wouldn't be happening. But then again, I keep telling myself it would have come up eventually. Some of you were asking why I'm so invested, and here's some background. My brother is a kind and gentle person, but the problem is that people often see his kindness as a weakness, just like my stepdad did, and they take advantage of it. My stepdad was psychologically abusive toward my brother, constantly calling him names and mistreating him. I didn't include this in my original post because it's something that still hurts me deeply. At the time, I wasn't living with them because I chose to stay with my dad to avoid dealing with my stepdad's behavior. My stepdad couldn't manipulate me, and I didn't let him get under my skin. I was the only one who would stand up to him, and things got really heated after my mom finally broke up with him. One night, things got so bad that my brother showed up at my dad's place with all his belongings because my stepdad had almost physically assaulted him. Thankfully, my brother got out before things escalated. My mom didn't fully know what was happening because she was also dealing with her own abuse from my stepdad. But that night, she realized it was enough and ended the relationship. Afterward, my brother moved in with me and my dad. Later, when my mom sold the old house and bought her current one, she and my brother moved in together. They're both doing better now, but they're still in therapy because they went through a lot. After he told me everything that happened, I felt so guilty for not being there to protect him. It still feels like I failed in my role as a big sister and a daughter. Growing up, I always felt responsible for protecting my brother. When our parents got divorced, I tried to keep him occupied whenever they were fighting so he wouldn't hear the arguments. I heard everything, but I wanted to make the divorce as smooth as possible for him. That experience left me feeling like it was my responsibility to shield him from anything painful or traumatic. It might seem like I'm too involved, but with his previous girlfriend, I was hesitant and distant, and I know that hurt him. So, this time, I made more of an effort to be present and not let my doubts keep me from trying to support his relationship. I didn't want to come off as harsh or unwelcoming to someone he cares about. But now, I feel stuck in between. I haven't talked to her since their fight. I don't want her to think I'm mad at her, but I also don't want to upset my brother if he finds out I'm still in touch with her. I'm not sure if she even wants to talk to me anymore. It feels like she was trying to distance herself, and maybe I just didn't catch on to that. I'm mad at myself because I finally tried to be present and supportive, but I feel like I ended up making things worse. I don't know what to do now. My brother's reaction to all of this has been to focus on himself. He's mad and wants to move on and just focus on getting back in shape and living his life. I don't know how to feel about his reaction. It seems like he's trying to brush it off, but I know it's hard on his ego, and he's hurting. I don't know if it's the update that you guys wanted, but it's all I know for now. Stories number 62. Am I the asshole? H for cutting ties with my sister after her husband touched my daughter at a sleepover. Yesterday night, my daughter, 8F, was at my sister's house for a sleepover with her cousin. When I picked her up today, she broke down crying and told me that late at night, her uncle, my sister's husband, came into the room and touched her and her cousin sexually, their private parts, and forced them to be quiet while he was doing it. I called my sister and she said she had no idea that was happening and that she was so sorry. I told her that she was supposed to protect my daughter and that she failed and that I will never forgive her and that she is no longer my sister. My parents called me and told me that cutting ties with her was unnecessary because she didn't know. Stories number 63. Am I the asshole? For refusing to share my bed with my 14-year-old brother when my family visits. I, 22F, moved recently to another country and I share an apartment with my dad. It's a 2-bedroom and I took the master bedroom because my dad isn't there as often as I am and I have more things than him that wouldn't fit in his room. He's fine with it because he lives there only 1/4 of the time and I live there full time. Also, I can't move out because they won't allow it and see it as me abandoning him. My mom and little brother visit us often. They visited for a month recently and my little brother insisted on taking my room. My mom slept with my dad and I was asked to share a bed with him. I don't want to, obviously. Which 22-year-old wants to share a bed with her 14-year-old brother for a month? He moves a lot in his sleep and I can't sleep peacefully. I slept on the sofa for the entire month and I got called difficult, selfish etc. the whole time. Now, my family wants to visit again in a few months and obviously I asked about the sleeping arrangements, got called annoying for even asking. I asked if my mom and I could share my bed and my brother sleeps in my dad's room with him. My brother refuses to. He wants to sleep in my room because it's bigger, which I don't understand and it upsets me that my mother will force me to allow it. I don't have my own choices even though I live far from home. Am I the asshole? They're coming for only a week but I still don't want to sleep in the same bed with my brother. I don't understand why he can't sleep with my dad. My dad would also have to move to my room. I also will be working, taking classes, going to the gym regularly when they're there so it's difficult for me. I struggled a lot the month they were there because I barely got any sleep. I feel like other parents would have boundaries and have younger siblings respect their older siblings' space. I think the only way they would respect my space is if I got married. Everyone in my family gangs up on me and makes it out as if I'm the problem so I'm genuinely confused. Edit, my dad is with my mom more than half of the time. He is with me only around 1/4 of the time because he lives there only when he travels for work. It's not the only time they get to see each other. Edit 2, I suggested my brother sleeping on the couch but they wouldn't even consider it and got mad at me for suggesting. If I downsize to the smaller room, my brother would still want to sleep in the master bedroom because he likes that bed and my parents wouldn't get to sleep together either way. Edit 3, culture is a big aspect. I'm South Asian and it's nothing like Western culture. I can't simply move out. I'm not sure how to insist he takes the couch either. My mom keeps talking about how I've changed and how I don't like to share beds with them anymore. I genuinely think she will just tell him to get on my bed and I can't just shove him off because he's heavy. I tried moving him away from me when we used to share. My 30-year-old sister doesn't see an issue with this either and they all think I'm strange for finding it weird. Stories number 64. Wedding guest smeared his bloody hands all over the walls of the venue. This happened a few years ago, but it was by far the worst wedding experience we have ever had at our venue apart from the one wedding we had to shut down. It was actually a +1 of a wedding guest who did this. His date who was invited, let him know that her ex-boyfriend was there that night. I don't know the story with the ex or anything, but whatever it was did not excuse her date's behavior. He got so angry that this girl's ex was there, that he walked outside and punched out a light fixture on a stone post outside the front doors, with his bare fist. We saw it happen on our security cameras later, and while his hands were bleeding, literally dripping blood, he walked back to the front doors and wrestled with the door trying to slam them behind him as he walked back inside it but couldn't. Our doors all have soft closures on them, so it was kind of funny to watch him try to slam them and couldn't. He was wrestling with the doors because they would not slam. Dude comes back inside the building and wipes his bloody hands all over the white sheetrock inside the lobby, all down the long hallway, on wooden posts outside the bathroom, and all over the white bathroom walls. It was a ton of blood. We had an event the next day for 400 people. It was a church event. We couldn't even paint over it. Do you know how hard it is to paint white over blood? It doesn't cover. We had to put up big room dividers so the guests for that day couldn't go that way in the building and had to use different bathrooms. And the craziest thing is that we adored the couple who was getting married. Just goes to show, even if you're a nice couple, people at your wedding can still do awful things and it will be completely unexpected. This is what a damage deposit is for. Also, if you are invited to a wedding and don't respect the venue and vendors they have hired, you're a grade A asshole. He was arrested, by the way. His date was too drunk by the time this happened and was sitting in our event office sobbing and hitting her head on the table repeatedly. We tried to take care of her and felt bad for her, but my God. People truly do not understand what event professionals have to suffer and deal with. I will say the guy did come to our venue a few days later and talked to my boss. He apologized for what happened and agreed to pay what it cost to fix the light fixture and all the repainting in the venue. He definitely is a toxic human being and was totally doing it so we would drop all charges. But we did. Dropped all charges as long as it was paid for. We're not out to punish people honestly as long as they apologize and own up to it. But damn.